see, are we live?
This
We
is
are
live.
live. What is going on, people? Spencer, how you doing this morning?
Well,
Or
I'm
actually,
doing
my bad.
I'm doing really good. It's a perfect day today. Absolute perfect day.
Oh, geez. So, folks, welcome. This is the first celebrity that we're having on our agenda for today for the Decentralized Conference. Very first time that we've put this together. The idea is so that you guys, folks out there in the Omniverse, can get in contact with these change makers, construction influencers in an easy format. And you just come in, show up, wear what you want to wear, leave your comments, ask your questions. We got Spencer Easton up first. He's going to kick us off, get the energy going. Please follow him. So we're streaming on multiple channels, on the presenters channel, on my channel, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're going to be bouncing around all over the place. And so please feel free to share and bring your comments on in here. And with that, I need to ask Mr. Spencer Easton. Spencer, before I jump off the screen and stop bumping my gums, let people know who you are and why you're here, my friend.
Well, I'm Spencer Easton, and I've been in construction since I can remember. My dad was in construction. We'll actually talk about that story. The first time I've ever really talked about my dad's story, and I'm really here, honestly, because I want to help construction get better, and that's the story I'm going to talk about today. And why I'm really here is because Jesse has inspired me to share that story with you all. So I'm excited to be here, promote Jesse and his new book that just came out. That is today, it's getting delivered. I was hoping to have it here so I could show up, but that's kind of what's my background. So that's who I am in a quick nutshell and why I'm here.
Amazing. All right, folks. Well, there you have it. Spencer, thank you for bringing up the book. It is your show. We will be back up here at the last 5 minutes to do a transition, have some questions, and I'm going to be sharing a screen, correct?
Yep.
All right, here we go, y'all.
All right. So the topic I want to talk about today, and before I dive in, if you're watching this, anybody out there, and as Jesse says, the Omniverse, leave a comment, and I will do the best that I can to field those questions as we go through this presentation. Adam Hoots is already on here saying spends money, so love you, Adam. Excited to hear your section of this. So on we go. So the question is, why Takt? And when I refer to Takt, what I'm talking about is what is known as Takt Planning and Takt Control, which is TPTC. I have a link here that shows where this comes from, research back in 2017. And there's a little image here that gives you kind of what the idea is. Now, I'm not here to talk about Takt exactly. I'm here to talk about why Takt. Like, why should we want to do it? Why is it something that we should be discussing in construction? And I have a bunch of different stories about people, because if we're not making work easier for the people around, then why would we do something? So let's dive in. The first person I want to tell a story about is Dennis. Now, Dennis is a superintendent. He had worked at a general contractor that I worked at as well for a number of years. And this is a picture without Dennis, which is the funny part about this picture. You can see the team is gathered around doing planning. They did this type of meeting weekly, and then they had other type of schedule planning, production, people, meetings throughout the week. And Dennis wasn't here, but he was the lead superintendent on this project. And this was during an extremely important part of this phase of work. And this exact moment, Dennis was on PTO. And it was the first time he'd been able to take time for his family in 10 years. Me and him sat around a trailer that was adjacent to this, and we talked about that for a long time. And he attributed it to the new way that we were approaching project delivery with Takt. And so, number one, it gives us the ability to have good work-life balance. And Dennis, in his amazing story, is a good example of that. Moving on, Elmer is a rock star. Elmer, which you can see right here in kind of the middle of the screen, he was the senior superintendent when I first met him, and he had the power to influence people. And he used to tell me a lot of stories of how he was a superintendent, growing up as a builder in the trades, and then kind of made that shift to the general contracting side. And he said he used to yell at a lot of people to get a lot of stuff done, right? And when I met him, he had mellowed out a lot. And on the project that you see here on the screen, where you see him pointing and doing a kind of a huddle recap of the stuff that's behind him on the board, this is when they had just barely started implementing Takt on their project. And you can see kind of the upper right hand corner up here, some of these different pictures of what the job site looked like. And he said to me that the Takt plan helped him to create stability. And there's some cool images here. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe I'll blow it up. You can see it says clean and steady. This was an ordeal that he came up with and put on here on these carts that they would put all over the job site with different, these were little hooks that they made for the temporary lighting. So they were all over the place so they could keep the lighting off the ground. You can see there's a shovel and a fire extinguisher and broom. And it was just this like little ordeal, but he took advantage of the space here and put a little saying, and he used to say it all the time, clean and steady. And this is how they decided to start running their job, because the Takt plan gave them the ability to run clean and steady. And so in these meetings, they would often talk about the job and that their ultimate goal was to go clean and steady. And when he approached me after this job, he told me that, man, with the Takt plan, it makes the work so much easier. It makes it so that there's less stress. And to me, that was way more important than if it can make things go faster, more efficient, or if it was more cost effective. It's like, if we can eliminate stress on the construction site, like, how amazing is that? So that was an amazing testament. Let's move on to the next story. Brian. Brian was someone that had used Takt planning before. And when I first came into contact with people that he knew, we hadn't met yet, I said something that I'm still looking for a project or a construction that Takt doesn't apply to. And he was about to start work on a Chick-fil-A, a 1.5 million, very small project, 1,300 square foot Chick-fil-A. And he had used Takt planning before, and he was like, okay, Spencer thinks he's looking for a challenge. Let's see if we can apply it here. And this was kind of the outcome. We sat together and he showed me the plans. We spent 1.5 hours together. After that, he took what we kind of had discussed and talked about, which was mostly principles. Like, here's the principles that we would need to stick to in order for this to work on the Chick-fil-A. Then he went with the team and figured out the plan. And recently, he had a presentation in front of hundreds of people talking about this Chick-fil-A and how the project overall duration was cut by 25%. They finished the overall job in 25% less time because of the Takt plan. And that wasn't the only amazing thing that Brian was able to pull off based on the principles of Takt planning. He wasn't able to go run this job. He didn't have the resources to run this job. And so the upfront planning that was so easy to read and easy to understand, he was able to do it in conjunction with his carpenter foreman. And that person was able to run the job successfully, 25% quicker than we've ever built this type of project, and that we had planned and scheduled upfront and figured out how to pull it in with Takt. So it was a huge testament of Takt and how it affected the bottom line, people's growth, and cutting through the status quo of Takt only works in cookie cutter, hotels. This is not. This is a Chick-fil-A, not even a standalone building. This is a storefront like you would see in an airport. Let's move on to Ryan. I absolutely love Ryan. I wish you guys could all meet Ryan. Ryan is like an amazing human. He was able to start running his project with Takt. And when he did, he was able to show that he, at a very young, experienced age, was able to get amazing results, better than most everybody else in the company that he worked for. So the company started flying people out to see Ryan and what he was doing, and was the reason why he was able to make it to senior soup and was the youngest senior soup in his entire company, because it wasn't that he needed the tenure. He was able to perform higher than all the other senior soups in the company. Hence why they were sending everybody else to come to his project. The company allowed him to pick his project that he went to next because he did such an amazing job. So this, again, is another outcome of people using the principles of Takt planning. Let's move on to Jay. Jay was one of the first people that I met in Arizona. Jay is a one-of-a-kind person. When I first met him, he was very quiet and kind of standoffish. Not too different from a number of superintendents I had met before. But Jay, later I came to understand, was thinking about leaving the industry. He was done. He was burned out. He didn't want it anymore. And we sat down, and together, he and I, in a room, I can even picture it today, we created this Takt plan right here. And that, he said, was the turning point in his career. Not that it was me, is that he finally had a tool to use to communicate better with the people, to be able to do things together and not just point fingers and say, you need to go do this. We had put together a plan based on what everybody could do and what everybody needed to do. And you can see here, there's been multiple other different projects that he's been on. He ultimately decided not to quit. And this process lit a passion underneath Jay. And he started to actually be the person when people would come, he would take them on tours and show them. And he got really, really passionate about his work and about how he was able to help the team to perform. You can see here the copy of the Takt plan that he had on him. He would go through and he'd mark, and you can see that line of where we are right now was pretty good. There's some things that are behind, there's some things that are ahead, and he would mitigate that with the actual trade partners. So this was a great communication tool that Jay was able to find. Now, there's another story here. You see him with paper right here, but the other cool thing is Jay was not one of these superintendents that's all about the new tech, right? He had not really learned how to use computers, but right after this picture was taken, we went inside and he showed me how he would update the paper, and then he'd go in and he would update the actual Excel sheet too, which is a huge milestone. It was a huge step forward for Jay. And he said, this is an old dog learning new tricks, which was freaking amazing. I absolutely love that. So it was just a testament to how if we make it easy for people, it doesn't have to be all that complicated. And the cool thing about Jay right here, this Takt plan that you see behind him right here, he built that from scratch by himself. No scheduler, no project manager. The superintendent built this, owned this, and drove this through the entire project with his trade partners. I have a bunch of amazing videos of Jay. There's one about collecting plan percent complete. He and a couple of foremen, and he go through and like talk about where we were at, and you can just see how he has cultivated an amazing culture on his project, and he will continue to do so. I absolutely love it. Let's move on to our next candidate, Ben. Ben is an amazing person. It's funny because I have never met Ben, but I know the story of Ben, and I had to share Ben's story. So Ben, in this picture here, I believe, is a project manager. Currently, he's a project executive. Now, let me tell you how he made that transition. When we look at the picture right here, you see his Takt plan, and it was his and the team's, of course. But the amazing picture and story about Ben was the picture on the right, up here in the right-hand corner. After this project was done, the entire team was polled or surveyed to see, and this is kind of a standard with the company that he works for. They're asked, how did this project go? What could we improve on? What is going well? What's not going well? And before now, I was told that since they had started surveys, they had never, ever received a survey showing green in all categories, let alone, you can't see it here, but it says actual 3.9. This is a 3.9 out of 4 rating. They had never, ever achieved that high by a large margin. And they really couldn't see anything to work on based on this. So it's the highest team member experience score that any project had ever got before. And this was the first time this company had ever used Takt planning. The crazy thing is they kind of came up with it on their own. They didn't even see that the industry was doing Takt planning or anything like this. It made sense to them. How can we all work together and flow the work together so that everyone has the time that they need, so they can work in the areas that they can do their work? It just absolutely blew me away hearing this story, and I had to share it with you. I do want to do a little shout out, Jennifer Lacey. Thank you for being on here. It's always about the people. I totally agree with you. I love it, love it, love it. Let's move on to our next story. Steve. Steve works for Harris Companies, which is HVAC, or a mechanical contractor. And the story goes like this. They worked on the project that Ben was on, this project back here. I'll go back to it. This project. And Steve is a made-up name because I actually don't know his name. But the one of the executives did a debrief with the team. And this was the quote from Steve. And this is an exact quote. So I know this actually took place, and I have eyewitness accounts that this was said. We were 35% more productive than estimated or planned on that entire job. And I attribute that to the Takt plan. Boom. That's financial and amazing. Like that right there is the testament. If we need to know something from the trades, like that would be the one thing. Does it help us be more productive? Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely love that story. Let's move on to Jim. Jim is one of a kind. I've never met someone like Jim. He had been brought on as a consultant to help with some specialty things. He walked by this Takt plan that Jay Newman created, and he asked, I forget who was with him, but he asked, what is this? Tell me what this is. And they started talking about it, and he said, I knew it. I knew the day would come when we would crack the code. And the cool thing is that Jim asked to join this contractor. It attracted Jim to come work for the same company. And so he asked, once he joined, he said, he figured out that I was kind of the person propagating Takt planning at this company. And he said, I need to meet this guy. So we met, and he said, if there's one thing that I want today is I want to get in front of that Takt plan and take a picture with you. And so here's the picture. Here's the proof. The long story about Jim, I did a fun little video, stories from the field. We'll drop that in the comments, and so that you can go watch that little video blip. Great story about Jim and kind of his passion in life that actually isn't construction, but it's a great testament to Jim and people like him in the industry. Let's move on to Bill. Bill's the CEO of Oakland Construction, and we started doing Takt planning there, and it was it was getting around the company. It was doing really well. And then one day, I got word that we had been awarded a few projects, and the owner cited that the reason why we're awarding you guys this project is because we finally have a contractor that can tell us the plan and we can actually understand it. The Takt plan did that for us, and we love that you guys are doing that, and we are awarding you the project based on that. So Bill Oakland said, we need to do Takt plans on every single project and start with Takt. And so you can see in this top right-hand corner here, that's exactly what we started to do. And then after that, it only took us a little bit to ramp up and get there. But then not me, but the whole team, we got behind this, and every single project started with a Takt plan. And that's because of the amazing owners seeing the value and wanting that. So that's an amazing story of Bill. Let's move on to Aaron. Aaron is a rock star, amazing human being. He's gonna, I hope to work for this man someday. We'll drop another video in the comments about the story about Aaron. He was an intern FE peon guy that legitimately the first time I met him was in Home Depot, and he was running. I don't forget what I was there for, but he was grabbing stuff for work, and because they didn't have the material, and so he was basically a gopher running all over the place. Well, when they started doing Takt planning on his job, he was then able to focus and take the time to set up amazing supply chain logistics, just-in-time, and material inventory systems on his project. A blip about that is in the video. You'll have to check it out. But another cool story about Aaron is that he was newly married, and he was able to make it home by 3:30 p.m. every day after they started implementing Takt on the project. And he told me he was worried about, being a newly married guy and having to be the guy that was there first thing in the morning and at the very end of the day. So he was there, at least 12 hours a day, if not more, every single day. And once they started really dialing this in on their project, he was able to have work-life balance as well. And so he made some comments that, it is helping his marriage to continue on the path of amazingness in that honeymoon phase that he was in. So it's a great story there. And last, I have a story that I've never told before. And I'm actually really, really nervous to tell this story. Let's move on to Mark. This is, and I haven't shared anybody else's last names, but I will share this guy's last name. This is Mark Easton. This is my father. Mark Easton was a young man, newly married when he started working in construction. And he had been building things and working in construction his whole life when he got a break. And that's this kind of middle picture right here. He was able to go learn drafting and some technical skills. And they were asking around who in the company wanted to go do that. And he, as a foreman, rose his hand and was willing to make that leap. He ultimately became vice president of an industrial construction company, part owner. And that's this picture right here. He was acting as a project executive, project manager, superintendent, estimator, like everything. Is a small company that did about 20 million a year and was living some of the American dream. And in 2021, he passed away. The reason for his passing was multiple things, but what caused it initially was stress. The doctors came in and they were asking about why there was no indication of why he should be going into renal failure, kidney failure. And they asked, because they couldn't find any biological or chemical reasons why it would be happening. They asked about the amount of stress that he had in his life. And we all just had to laugh and say, yeah, you can say that he has stress in his life. You're not kidding. And the real story here is more of a story about me. In the top right-hand corner here, you see me and my oldest daughter. This is on the Buzz Lightyear ride in Disneyland. And the reason why I picked this picture is because you see me and my dad attacking Zurg and his army in Toy Story. And this is what I believe Takt is doing. It's fighting the good fight to help people like Mark not have stress, not have the problems that have plagued us. And this is the reason, in my estimation, for Takt planning. It helps us have better work-life balance. It helps us have less stress. It helps us make work easier. It helps us to promote growth. It helps us to more easily understand the plan. It helps with a better work environment. It helps because customers want it. It helps deliver projects 20 to 80% faster. I know I shared one that was 25, but that's out of the box. You can do even better depending. It's more efficient. It showcases top talent. We make more money because of it. We're more productive. It attracts top expert talent. It gives us the time to focus on value. And in my estimation, it helps save lives because of it. Now, I am in a war against our status quo. And Takt is one of the things in our arsenal against it. Everybody else on this decentralized conference is going to talk about other things that are in our arsenal. If you're in construction and you're watching this, please pay attention. In my estimation, there's lives at stake. Thank you for your time. I appreciate everybody. And Jesse, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share those stories about some amazing people in our industry.
Spencer, you class act is all I can say. What do you think, Mr. Joe?
Absolutely.
So folks out there in the Omniverse, catching the replay even, leave your comments. There's a link to connect with Spencer and all of his magical, wonderful stuff out there. I have spent some time. You probably can see how poor a student I am, Spencer, on the back end. So I started doing some of your online Takt training, which right out of the gate opened my mind, and the idea you present around flow and turbulent flow was like, oh, that was a distinction that I never even considered. So thank you for that, folks. It's out there. Hit them up. Joe, do you have a question for Spencer before I blab mine out?
I don't have a specific question. I just wanted to offer up my appreciation, especially at the end of your message and being vulnerable and just sharing and walking through the journey with your dad and recognizing the impacts that this industry has in its current state. And really, to me, that was the biggest value proposition of all within your presentation. I just appreciate you being real and honest and sharing a story that I know is very powerful, but also very real and potentially painful to you. So well done. Great presentation. And I'm thankful that I get to know you in this industry as well as call you friend. So appreciate your wisdom.
Amen to that. And Spencer, we got Jen saying, amazing job, Spencer. So many ripples of impact. And folks, if you're here if you're just now logging in to catch Mr. Joe Donnarumma, welcome to the De-Centralized Conference. This is kind of going to be the layout. We're going to have a baller. They're going to rock your world. And we're going to close with another baller who's going to rock your world. And we're going to keep on trucking on through that. And so before we hand the stage over to Mr. Joe, my question to you, Spencer, is it would have been very practical to talk about the techniques and the button pushing and all the data, I guess, behind Takt. But you went the human route. Would you mind explaining what motivated? Why did you decide to talk about the people?
Yeah, because that matters way more than the technical part. Mm-hmm. It matters way more. And I'm humbled and thrilled that I get to say my response with you two on the call, because you're two of the people that have helped me realize that it's not just about the technical aspect, because I'm traditionally a geek that way, and I geek out on process. The Lean Builder book that Joe co-authored is an instrumental book that has helped me keep going on the fight that we have against the status quo in the construction industry. So that's one reason. Second reason is, recently me and Jesse had an interview about something that he said, and that interview and learning about what his new book that is my background, which I'm super stoked to read about. It is the real conversation to be had. We just finished mental illness month, right? May. And we should not just have it be a month thing. Like, it's the most important conversation. So that's why. Beautiful. So thank you both.
Thank you, my friend Spencer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well done. And we're going to hand it on over. We'll see you later, Mr. Spencer.
See you guys. Have fun.
All right. So now I'm up here with, I'm like it's like I'm in a Marvel comic meeting all of my superheroes, right? I get to spend a little bit of one-on-one and then watch it all in the background. Joe, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I know you're busy. You got plenty of stuff going on. So folks, this is Mr. Joe Donnarumma. If you got questions as we're going along, drop them in the comments. We'll bring them up. Joe, I'm going to disappear to the background here. Okay. And about 5 minutes towards the end, me and our next baller are going to jump on. Thank you, my friend. And here we go.
All right, let's dive into it. I'm going to pull up my screen real quick, and then we'll dive. Let's see. Bear with me.
All good, my friend. I want to come up here to get folks out there in the Omniverse. You ever notice how much pressure silence adds?
Right.
So I just want to come up here and bust up some of that pressure. Adam says the Lean Builder in the house. Joe D. All right, yes. I'm gonna bring you're up on the screen here, and I'm disappearing.
All righty. Okay, here we go. So real quick, my name is Joe Donnarumma. I get to serve Lindbeck Group as Vice President of Field Operations. I've also had the blessing and the privilege of co-authoring a book called The Lean Builder, where we dive into how to practically go apply lean tools, principles, methodologies in the field. But we really start first with the people and not so much the tools. That's why I really resonated and appreciated Jesse's question to Spencer, as he, instead of diving into all the technical aspects of Takt planning and what it is and why you should do it, he really focused on the people. And that's why I really feel like the best place to even start a discussion around lean, these tools, these methodologies, these principles, is why. Why even care? Why should you engage? Why should you listen? Because oftentimes that's where I'm at, whether I'm meeting a new superintendent, or I'm talking to a new leader who's contemplating transitioning into running, lean operations and tools on their project. A lot of times I'm met with that, either the criticism or I'm just not ready to change. And frankly, the discussion often goes, why the hell should I change? I've worked for my firm for, let's say, 20 years. I've made my firm a lot of money. My clients ask for me by name. Like, the way that I run my projects, it's not broken. There's no reason I should even be trying to change the way that I'm running work. And oftentimes when meeting with an individual like that and being in that discussion, I like to just pause and take the spotlight off of that individual and just pivot it over to the industry and just unpack for a second with that leader. Let's just take a little walk down the current state of our industry, and let's see if we can gain some consensus and agree on a few things. Then we'll come back to that question. So really, the next part of this presentation, just think of it as the value proposition, whether it's for yourself or whether it's for maybe a team member on your project site, or a trade partner that you're wanting to bring along and show value, or maybe it's that operations executive or leader that you're trying to demonstrate why we need their support from the top down as well to really move the needle at the end of the day for the reason of creating more value for the men and women in the field. So let's unpack the current state of the industry for a second. If I was to ask someone within my firm who might have been with Lindbeck maybe 20, 25 years, maybe there's a little gray in their beard or some gray in their hair. I said, let me ask you something. When you got a set of drawings, maybe 20, 25 years ago, were they more reliable to go put a plan together around how you're going to go execute and build that job? And 9 times out of 10, I'll get chuckles and they'll be like, absolutely, Joe. Frankly, in the current state, oftentimes we're rushing to get a permit set out so we can go get a building permit. And the rest of the design comes out via ASI, RFIs, and we're just having to figure it out on the fly, which really impacts our ability to make a reliable plan of how we're going to go execute the work. Now I'm going to pause. This isn't me launching stones at our design partners. When we think about what they're up against, they've been commoditized like much of our trade partners. The speed at which they have to move through a validation, SDDD implementation from our clients is at an alarming pace. We had a tremendous outflux of design professionals leave our industry in the last recession. So we have no people, we got no time, we got no money. We now have this greatest dependence on copy, paste, design, and pulling that system, that assembly, that detail that worked a couple projects ago, and then the general contractor and the trade partners will figure it out on the fly, thus making it much more harder to plan reliably around the documents that we have. Next, skilled labor. We all know the skilled labor shortage. This isn't anything new. This isn't the right presentation or platform to talk about that. But the point I'm bringing up here is we have a skilled labor issue and a shortage within our industry. And there's no floodgate that's about to open and just flood our industry with additional skilled labor. In fact, the shortages, the issues, the frustrations that we have is actually going to get worse before it gets better. We're starting to take some steps in the right direction. But again, we have a significant gap that we're having to overcome within our industries right now. So we got drawings, we got skilled labor. Now let's just talk about labor in general. We got about 600,000 unfulfilled jobs within our construction industry, not skilled, just jobs altogether. We have a significant shortage of just resources, folks, to be able to put this work in place. Okay, I'm going to have a little fun with my trade partners now. And again, I'm not poking, I'm not throwing stones, but if I was to maybe ask that same leader that I asked in my firm about drawings and say, let me ask you something else, maybe 20, 25 years ago, when you had a trade partner show up to your project, did they already know the project? Did they have the plans highlighted up, marked out, and they had a plan in their head of how they were going to go execute and perform their scope of work on their project? Then again, I get chuckles because oftentimes in our current state, when we have our trade partners show up, we're either giving them the Procore link or printing out a set of drawings. And frankly, they haven't even had time to look at the project, let alone think through how they're going to go execute the work. In the same token with our design partners, I'm not throwing a stone. If we really think and unpack what our trade partners are dealing with, they've been commoditized. They're dealing with projects that don't start on time, have been pushed back. They're dealing with general contractors who can't schedule, who don't have flow on their work, who demand that they show up and then the work's not ready, so their work plan's messed up. They're dealing and managing with this skilled labor shortage within our industry. And for all of those reasons, it's so much harder to have a reliable plan and allow our trade partners the ability to have input, to think through and to plan well and long before they come to our project, all adding to the pressures of making a really good, reliable plan of how we're going to go, again, execute the work. Next, we have 5 generations in our workforce in the construction industry. What's unique about that is every generation communicates a little bit differently. Where you may have some of your older demographics, maybe eyeball to eyeball handshake. Maybe the next generation is an email. The next generation is a phone call. The next generation is a text messages. And it just really transformed the dynamic of the way that we communicate. And frankly, we've never been an industry that really had the focus on communication. It was probably number 8 or 9 on the list of 10 things that we had to deal with, because as an industry, we had maybe 20, 30 years ago, we had better drawings, we had more skilled labor, we had more labor in general on our projects. We had trade partners that had time to plan and to think through how they were going to go execute the work long before they showed up on the project. So when the superintendent took off his hard hat and chunked it across the job site, it meant something. In our current state, this is no longer a management philosophy or technique that is tolerated. And in fact, when we think about this generation or our current state of our industry and the generations that are going to be coming into this industry, I think it would be safe to say, if I was in person and we had some conversation, some dialogue, that this wouldn't be a management technique that is accepted. It's funny, when we do this presentation, a lot of times we do it in a workshop when we're coming through this value proposition. And Keon has a story. A few years ago, he was at his children's school. They were 8 years old at the time, and it was Bring Your Parent to School Day and Career Day. And they were talking about, what do the parents do, and just getting the kids excited about what options are out there as they grow up and continue in their education. And before Keon started with sharing his journey and what he does, he's just started asking some of the children within the classroom, hey, what do you guys want to be when you grow up? And after the sixth child went, all the answers were the same, and it was all a YouTube influencer. And I think what's unique about that answer and that response is we're no longer an industry that's fighting each other for talent. But the war for talent is our construction industry against every other industry out there in our current state. When we think about our industry, when we're selling it and marketing it to others, we're like, hey, come to our industry where you can, have an amazing career. You can work with amazing equipment. You can work outside. You can build meaningful buildings and structures that impact the lives and enrich the lives of the community, whether that's through healthcare, education, the arts. It's such a rewarding career. But where you're going to go use the bathroom? Let's not really talk about that. Where you're going to go eat lunch? No, I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time talking about that. Or even getting really into the heavy stuff. So we're an industry that leads in failed marriages. We're an industry that leads in substance abuse. We're an industry that leads in cardiac issues. We're an industry that leads in suicide. All of the real heavy, meaningful things that impact our industry. So I'm thinking back to those leaders who are, those children who are 8, 9, 10 years old who are going to be entering our workforce in 8 to 10 years. Do they really want to come to an industry where they work 60 to 70 hours a week? Do they want to come to an industry where they work every weekend? Do they want to come to the high stress, high pressure work of the construction industry in its current state? Or do they want to go take that job where they get to go work from home 2 days a week or 3 days a week? Or they got the cool foosball and the beer keg and the ping pong table in the break room? And the point I'm trying to make is the industry has changed. The game has changed. What once made a field leader, a project manager successful, the tools that were in that toolbox aren't necessarily the same set of tools that makes that leader successful today. So I go back to that question at the beginning of this value proposition of, okay, so you're a successful superintendent, project manager, field leader in construction. You've worked for your firm for several years. You've made your firm a ton of money. Your clients ask for you by name. You've never missed a CO date. Why should you change the way that you run your work? And oftentimes I'd ask that leader, well, when's the last time you just worked 40 hours? When's the last time you made it home for your children's sports game, ballet practice, whatever it may be, the extracurriculars that you could go spend with your family? When's the last time you were able to come home early and spend time with your significant other, or go on a date, or pour into something that enriches your lives through a hobby or activity? Then I might say, does it not seem harder and harder each and every year to pull your project across that finish line? Where oftentimes our jobs feel more like races than they do a team sport, with the superintendent or the field leader being the coach of that team and organizing all those trade partners to cross that finish line of the CO at the same time. And because of all this, I just feel like that's the right place to start about the people, about the current state, and really make the case for why lean. I don't think that implementing lean tools, methodologies, and principles is going to be a silver bullet. I'm not here to blow smoke, because it is rooted in people, and oftentimes people are the most challenging thing to work with and to manage and to build. But I do feel that lean, in its essence, is the best opportunity and tool that we have to bridge the current gap of dysfunction that plagues our construction industry today. So before I go any further, I just feel like there's a lot of different definitions. There's a lot of different discussion about, what is lean? What does that really even mean anyway? And I just feel like if I was to leave you with one thing today, I at least want to give you and offer up what my definition of lean is. And to me, it's three things. The first is respect for people. Anything that you do on your projects, just be thinking through, is this showing respect? The way that I run my meetings, the way that I show up, the way that I respond, the way that I engage, the way that I lead, is it respectful in the way that I am treating people? And is that the way that I want to be treated? To me, that's one of the legs of the stool. The second one is adding value and reducing waste. I see a lot of different things out there, processes, tools, softwares that says, hey, this is lean if you do this. This is lean. This is box checking. If you do, all these things, these are lean. And at the end of the day, I just boil it down to a filter that if whatever you are doing isn't adding value and reducing waste, it's not lean, and you just need to get rid of it. You need to put it aside. And you'll know when something's lean because it's adding value to your life or to your work, and it's allowing you to enjoy either that process, your work, or enriching your life in some fashion. And then lastly, continuous improvement. This is a journey, and being able to find and understand what bugs you and fixes it, and continuously improving upon your lean journey in every aspect, whether that's in your professional life or even at home or with your family, always finding those opportunities to make those small, minute improvements every day along the way. So with that, I just want to kind of wrap with the thought of, if you guys and gals are interested in lean, wanting to know, where do I start? Where do I engage? Where do I begin? About 3 years ago, had an opportunity to write a book with a dear friend of mine, Keon, and we wrote a book called The Lean Builder. The book is built around the Last Planner system, but more importantly, we spend a lot of time before we even get to Last Planner system really talking about how do you build a culture on your project around trust, accountability, mutual respect. And to us, that's the right place to start, because that's where the people is. That's the people element. And you have to have the culture on your project intact to be able to go truly implement those tools and methodologies to create the most value. So if you're interested in wanting to know where to start, we encourage you to check out the book. We also have a website with tons of blogs, information, resources, taking a deeper dive into all that stuff. And we also have an awesome podcast by one of our dear friends, Adam Hoots, who's going to be presenting tomorrow. And each week, Adam is diving in with different leaders across the construction industry, delving back and having rich discussion on topics such as that. So with that, I free to open it up for any Q&A around lean or anything that anyone feels free that they want to have some open discussion about.
All right. So I'm going to come up here. Folks out there, if you ain't moved, maybe you need a gallon of coffee. The first, as I was listening to you, John, we've been able to I've had the fortune of sharing space with you over the years. I'm curious, were you just born with this mindset? Like when you start early in your career, what was your approach, and was there a shift?
Yeah. I'm frankly a little embarrassed about probably the early part of my career, because the way that I came up within this industry was command and control. And frankly, I at my own hands, I treated trade partners in a really poor way, in a very disrespectful way. And I didn't empower those folks on my projects early on in my career. And for that, I'm really disappointed, but I am thankful that I had the opportunity to get to know a lot of amazing people who show me that no, Joe's, those aren't just, consumable resources on a project, that those men and women are actually the subject matter experts who know a whole lot more than your little Peabody brain will ever know about their craft and their discipline and their love. And they're actually the people that you need to bring into your circle to help build a reliable plan about how you're going to go execute the project. And from that point on, when I saw the light and I took that, green matrix pill, I was sold, I was done. And there's never been any turning back. So much so that so much of my passion around this isn't just, for my own self, as I want to get this message out there to as many people, just because I know the impact that it's had on my projects, my teams, and in my personal life, whether that's my marriage and my children's relationship. Just being able to perform work in this manner just allowed me to have a better quality of life. And I want others to experience it, especially the men and women in the field who put that work in place.
Man. Yeah. Like, it ain't nothing happening without them.
Yeah.
Like 100%. So we got a question from, I think this person, Miss Jen Lacey.
Yeah.
How do you start? How do you start this lean thing?
Yeah. Just by showing up different from day one and having the right attitude. It totally is. It's a mindset shift. It's a whole philosophy shift. But if I was thinking about on my job site, if you're a superintendent and you're listening to this and you're thinking, all right, where do I start? Today's Friday. What would I do on Monday? We were very intentional within the book. And when we do a workshop and we talk through this, we walk through the foundational steps of transitioning to a daily huddle, step number one. Because within that daily huddle, you're going to start to build relationships. And when you have relationships intact, that's when the dynamic really starts to grow, and you start to develop trust, and you start to develop accountability, and you start to develop mutual respect, and then things start humming. And at that point, once the team is yoked and communicating in that manner, then you're ready to start moving into communicating in a visual nature, maybe bringing in some constraint management as a team within that daily huddle. And then once all that's kind of starting to cook, then you're ready to start diving in the last planner system, making some commitments, holding each other accountable, and really leveraging that operational system to its maximum value. But to me, if you're going to take one thing away, where do I go start next week? Man, scrap the weekly subcontractor meeting. That's super painful. That's 2 hours that frankly, no one knows where the hell the job's going when they walk out of that job trailer anyway after a 2-hour meeting. And go transition to a daily huddle, start some good conversations, and really start to communicate the work in a visual nature. That's it. Step one.
A couple of things, Joe. First, I want to kind of touch on the transition, because I'm grateful to you that you opened up about how you started, the way you functioned and treated people earlier in your career, and then you decided to make a shift. And when you start having these daily huddles and start talking, like creating the venue for people to surface constraints.
Yeah.
How did you shift your thinking from saying, don't be bringing me excuses, to saying, thank you for surfacing these problems?
I think for me, my biggest aha moment around constraint management like that was what I didn't realize in my prior state is how much of my time and energy was eating up with managing constraints myself as a superintendent. And frankly, I used to get mad because I would have trade partner A talking about an issue or a constraint that trade partner B, who's literally 6 feet from trade partner A, say, hey, Joe, you need to tell so-and-so that they got some sheetrock in my way and I can't go do the in-wall rough on level 2. And I'm like, you mean George, who's been on the job 6 months, who's standing right here next to you? Why don't you talk to George? And I remember it used to frustrate me so bad. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. Have I ever created an environment that allowed George and John to even talk, to be able to develop a relationship? No, hell no. I had them in my job trailer for 2 hours, and I just dictated to them in a schedule that I made in a silo where they're going to be the next week. And then I'm mad now that they're not developing a relationship and talking to one another. And then when I started to think about it even more, Jesse, I was like, well, crap, half of my day is spent walking the job, following up on constraints that other people make commitments to me in a silo. Like, why am I the only one carrying that anxiety and all the waste around that? And I'm keeping them on my note card. Like, why don't we just throw it up on a board since we're already in a meeting trying to talk every day about it? And I think to me, that was the value proposition of how I got to even manage constraints in that manner. Then once I started to see like, wow, okay, wait a minute. Now we're talking about all this together. Now I'm actually getting the right information I need from the trade partner. And then if I'm much more effective in resolving the constraints, because now the entire team has awareness around it. And oh, by the way, now the team's accountability is going through the roof, because when someone says they're going to do something, they're saying it in front of a team versus one-on-one with the superintendent in a silo, who they're more likely to tell go pound sand because they didn't get done what they said they were going to do. It just totally transformed the game. And the nuance to that, Jesse, is exactly what you described, is being thankful and showing like, hey, man, thank you for bringing that up. I'm so glad we know about that now before it really impacts us in a couple of weeks. I tell you what, I'm going to go follow up. I'm going to go dive into that. Do you have some time for a sidebar tomorrow morning, and let's unpack? And then, but that doesn't happen, though. That doesn't exist until you have a culture and relationships intact to do that. And that's what the Daily Huddle provides.
Dude, man, we got a good question from Thomas LeMay. I think he wrote this one down last week because it's solid. And I think it's your response is going to be very valuable for a lot of people. So he says, Joe, will I face conflict when I start elevating roadblocks as part of my work?
Depends on your culture. I know Adam hates that word, but it is. It all depends on if you are the one who set the tone on the job site. And that job site, if the cultural tenets of that job site are trust, accountability, and mutual respect, then you should not experience conflict in a punitive nature. Now, if you're saying one thing and doing another, then yeah, you might experience that if there's those false cultural tenets are in place. But I'm thankful. Here's to me how like the beauty of Last Planner system to me is, if we're truly implementing this system as it's designed, and I'm bringing my subject matter experts together, and we're picking a milestone within the schedule, and we're validating that milestone through a pull plan. The first time that I have to identify a constraint is in that pull plan. If that constraint isn't resolved by the time I get to my look ahead schedule, I now have another opportunity that I can intercept that constraint. When my weekly work plan comes up, if that constraint isn't addressed, I have one more opportunity to address. And then at the end, when it's in the moment and it's hot and it's something that pops up, it is what it is. But the opportunity you have with leveraging Last Planner system allows you to identify those constraints and have that relationship in a discussion when something's 12 weeks away versus when every freaking constraint hits on the day of. What do you think that person's mentality and behavior and actions and the outward emotions going to be? No, they're going to be pissed off. And I just feel like that's the value of implementing a holistic operational system, because you're able to understand those much earlier than you were before and triage and put those buffers in place to mitigate them, so you don't lose your hair and look like me, and you don't because you did it the wrong way for too many years.
Oh, man, I'm with you. I remember personally when I was leading and facilitating pull planning for trade, specific for the trade partner only, I would come out like exhausted, like, God, all we have is constraints. Like, this sucked.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to wait a minute. Like, this is good because they're not stopping work yet. Like, we got some runway to do something about them.
Yeah.
Now, the last thing you talked about, the pull plan, the look ahead, the weekly work plan. And so there's this sequence of the Last Planner system. And I've heard or caught wind of this thing that's happening kind of across the country, your Lean Builder workshops. Would you mind helping the folks out there understand a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll end on this. We've had a ton of industry organizations as well as firms reach out wanting to do a workshop, and the demand has gotten to a point where we can't do it. frankly, but we still want to be able to serve value and offer these resources, because there's a lot of teams that want to go through the deep dive. We do an 8-hour full day workshop where we go through each one of these steps, but it's not theory, it's practical application. How do you go back to your job site next week and start putting the rubber to the road? So we decided, well, I bet we can take one day a month and let's just set up a tour and let's go hit the country. So we're going to start in Austin next month and then go to Charlotte and Orlando and Denver and Phoenix and New Orleans and Sacramento. And we're going to kind of take this thing on the road, and we're looking forward to it. So if you check out our website, the link's down below that Jesse's put up there, you'll see our workshop schedule. And Jesse, if I could even peel back the curtain just a little bit more, we got something unique in the works right now. I'm hopeful in Q4. We just spent some time over the past month and have put together a master class. We hired a film crew and a production crew, and we're putting together a Lean Builder Workshop masterclass. So if you can't get to a geographic city and be there in person, you'll be able to consume the same exact content in an amazing, engaging, interactive masterclass series like you would see on the app for Last Planner System and all of the lean tools and principles and methodologies. So that'll be coming out Q4. So just put that, set that aside for now. But Jesse, I'm blessed to know you, man. I am blessed to be able to be a part of this unconference, and thank you for the opportunity to share the gospel of lean and be able to hopefully provide some value to those on the line.
Amazing. Joe, I appreciate you, my man. Go continue being awesome, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Later.
See ya.
Whoo, baby. So anybody want to guess who's like next up? Turns out it's me. And I kind of forgot what I was going to talk about, getting all caught up in the awesome sauce that Spencer kicked us off with. He says, systems, not schedules, rates, not dates. I'm assuming you're talking about installation rates, which I can nerd out on forever. We got Adam Hooch showing some love. He says, Chewy is still on vacation right now, so you're stuck with me, y'all. And, you know, I do a lot of stuff. I'm out there all over the interwebs as often as I possibly can to share a message. One, it's a message of community and connection. Two, it's about demonstrating appreciation for the men and women that are doing the work. And I know that might be a little hyper-focused or exclusive. And yes, I'm doing it on purpose. And so when I'm talking about the men and women that are doing the work, I'm talking about the people that are putting their hands on the tools, that are out there sweating with salt stains down to their ankles. Their boots have salt stains in them. The ones that get yelled at, the ones that do get appreciated, because obviously you've seen Joe, you've seen Spencer. There are real true stories of a major shift happening in our industry, which is great. And we just need a whole ton more of that. And so I'm not speaking in terms of indicting everybody in the way they have been doing it. I'm speaking also having been on that side of things. And so what I want to present to you is an idea about Zoom levels and really around recalibrating your continuous improvement lenses. And so one question I want, actually, please, if you can respond in the comments. When you hear the term trade partner, who do you envision? Who is the person that you see? And so leave your comments. I'll bring them up here. Some of y'all may know the answers already, and that's perfect. What I'm going to propose to you is, when we hear, depending on our responsibility within the organization and on the jobs and the job sites that we're on, we think of jobs, we may be thinking of the trade partner, the name of the company. We may be thinking of the CEO or the principal of the organization, or the project manager or business development representative of the organization. And I just want to add another layer to that. When I say trade partner, I am talking about the people I referenced earlier. I am talking not just about the foreman or the superintendent or the project manager. I'm talking about the people out there doing the work. And for a very long time, when I started my continuous improvement journey, right, when I got into this lean stuff, I was focused 100% and solely on optimizing outcomes. And so what did that mean? Spencer gave me the privilege of being interviewed on his podcast earlier this week. It just aired. He did a phenomenal job, man. He made me sound smart. I treated people like things. The people out there that were doing the work, and I was a trade partner foreman and trade partner superintendent. The people that were out there doing the work, I treated them like they were a means to an end while carrying my lean flag. What did that look like? I'd walk the job, and it was a sprint. I'd walk, boom, 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 do a head count. If there was too many people on the lift, if there was 2 people on a scissor lift running copper, I was cutting your crew. Because there ain't no reason to have 2 people to run 2-inch and 1/2-inch copper. Like, you can do that by yourself. Like, we don't need no spectators here. That was my thinking. I focused on people showing up on time, taking a proper lunch break, right? Leaving at 11:30, be back by 12:20, not leaving early, nagging them about how they're doing things. Like, don't you think about it? Why work smarter, not harder? Like, all of these things that don't really have any meaning. I would come up with the list of all the waste that they had in their work, and I would give them the list and say, these are the things you need to improve. I was also the person that was setting the production rates and the production targets, and we'll say delivering performance reviews based on whether they missed or met those goals. So I'm telling them, you need to hit these outcomes, and you also need to make this better. But I wasn't giving them the resources, the thinking, the support to actually improve while also meeting their targeted outcomes. And so what ended up happening? People didn't really like me. I didn't get invited back to the party. When I showed up on the job site, everybody avoided eye contact because I was going to come and critique the hell out of their work, which is not respectful at all. And so that brings me to this idea that we all kind of throw it around. What is lean? Respect for people. What does that mean? Everything, anything, nothing, right? I've come to learn or accept that respect for people is about developing the capabilities in the people I serve. And to the question of what capabilities am I talking about? I'm talking about problem-solving capabilities, right? And so if I'm developing that skill set in the people that I serve, I am demonstrating respect. It's not being polite. It's not showing up on time for meetings. I mean, that's a small sliver of it. It is, if you suck and you're not making the cut, it's me letting you know that you suck. There is a gap in performance, and equipping you with the resources, training, etc., to close that gap. So it's not about being polite. It's about, again, helping develop the capabilities in our people. We got a comment coming in from Ms. Jennifer Lacey. She answered the question. When she thinks about trade partners, she thinks about our on-site, in the field trade people. Thank you, Jennifer Lacey. And so I got exposed to this new to me application or tool in the lean world. Some organizations called it Gamma-based improvement. I call it sweat equity improvement. And the backstory on it is I got a call from my boss. This was a few years back. And my boss said, Jesse, I need you to clear your schedule next week. And I need you to be at job X because we're bringing in some consultants and they're going to teach you how to study work. And I said, study work like consultants? I'm a tradesman. I'm a plumber. I'm a foreman. Like, there ain't nobody going to teach me how to study work. But my boss told me to do it, and there was an opportunity to learn, so I did it. And right out of the gate, Bryant Sanders, luckily I got teamed up with Bryant Sanders. We had 2 coaches from Lean Enterprise Institute. And there's an OG spotlight. I got to interview him a few weeks back. And he immediately shifted my thinking, right? His coaching style, and I'm using these are his words, it's like being pulled through a keyhole. So just imagine how painful that might be. What he tasked me with was studying work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like there's 3 people in the mechanical room and there's 6 people working on that UPS system. And there's about 10 framers. Like what else do I need to study? And this is where the zoom level, right? The recalibration of your continuous improvement lenses comes in. He said, no, I need you to stand there for 15 minutes and write down every step one individual is making. And I want you to pay attention to their eyes and their hands. If you can't tell me what their hands are doing and what their eyes are looking at, you're not looking close enough. And I was like, this is ridiculous. But okay, let me give it a shot. So we'll get in there, start doing the thing. And here's some magic that started happening. I was only standing there with the legal pad and my pen. And I was starting to complain a little bit about my hand cramping up because they were doing so many different things, right? There was just dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of steps in a 15-minute window. My back started feeling a little sore, and I was just standing there. What I was writing down was this man who was about 6 months away from retiring, bending down, kneeling, standing, leaning in, twisting, contorting. His eyes were squinting. He was wiping his brow. His hands were cramping up. He had to massage them and kind of smooth them out. And all of a sudden, I, maybe not accidentally, I'm sure this was the plan, I started building or acquiring an empathy for the work. You know, one of the things where he was landing cables in this equipment. And the landing point, the bus, was not here. It wasn't like chest level. It wasn't at a level where he could like just kneel down and still work here. It wasn't at a level where it was at this weird damn elevation where he couldn't kneel down. He couldn't stand up. So he had to kind of be hunched over the whole time doing the work and slanging around all his big, heavy tools. So we wrote down the list. Then we go back in. Coach says, all right, now I need y'all to identify, you know, I'm sure you've heard of it, value add incidental waste. Yes. Okay, big deal. I want you in all of those steps, whether it's value added step, an incidental step, or a waste step, I need you to identify whether it is hard or not. And of course, my response was hard, like, if it was hard, anybody would do it. Actually, what I said is if it was hard, project managers would do it, but that's not very nice. So he helped me understand. He said, no, when you think about hard work, I want you to think about having a pebble in your shoe. You can continue to walk, but it's going to bug the hell out of you. And if you do it all day long, you're going to have a big blister. And if you do it again tomorrow, you might bust the blister, and it's just going to wreak havoc over time. That is hard work. He said to me, what you consider hard work is abusive, neglectful work. Bam, there's a shift, right? My lenses were all like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like we pride ourselves, or I've prided myself on how much stuff I can carry, on how many risks I was willing to take in terms of putting my body in danger to execute the work and get the task done. And then here's where the beautiful thing starts happening, right? We start redesigning the work, specifically targeting the hard work, the burdensome work. And why is that important? I'm going to tell you why. And kind of go back a little bit. When I was observing and studying this man, his name's Ruben, we decided to show him our work because he was like, yeah, sure. You want to videotape me? Y'all go ahead and be nerds. I'm going to go do my job. Well, then I bring him up to all the charts and stuff that we have on the wall and say, hey, so all of this is value add and this is incidental and this is what incidental means and this is waste. And he said, waste? All that stuff that you're calling waste, that's bullshit y'all make me do. I didn't design the damn unit. I didn't spec out this equipment or this wire or etc. Right? And in that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, he is dealing with stuff that we, and when I say we, like management, supervision, owners, etc., we failed to design appropriately. Now, you may be getting a little twisted up on the idea about design thinking engineering design. And again, Zoom level. Yes, there is truth there. That's harder to affect in terms like it can be affected, but it may be months and months before, or maybe projects before it actually changes. The approach to the work, the cleanliness of the job, the tools and equipment that are available, the way that it's being measured are also part of the design. And so when we shifted to focusing on hard work and demonstrating like our ideas with the individual that was doing the work and asking for permission, can we study your work? Here are some of my improvement ideas. What do you think about? Do you think they're worth a damn or not? He advised us on what was going to be best for him, which would bring the most ease for him and his work. And so we went out and we got the stuff for him. And why is that different? Well, here's why it's different. I've been an installer and I've been a foreman. And as an installer, I'd have ideas about getting a cart with wheels or getting some new whiz-bangy thing that I knew would make things easier for us. And my foreman may or may not make the purchase. In some cases, the foreman would say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me get them ordered. And when they get ordered, the project manager would respond and say, that's not in the budget. We're not spending that. Oh, okay. And so what is that message to me? Well, my ideas are not valued. In other cases, the foreman would just say, stop being a whiner, bro. Like, that's the way it is. Suck it up and do the damn job. That's all it is. And we wonder why our craft workers, our tradespeople out there don't bring ideas and do their work in a hard and wasteful, difficult manner. It's because we've kind of forced them by saying no to surrender to the horrible conditions that they've been working in their entire career. So we've conditioned that. We are responsible for that. That's not to say that they can't do something about it. I'm just saying that recalibration, we need to take ownership for our contribution in that outcome. Mr. Adam Hoot says they've been conditioned. Yes, and we are guilty for the conditioning. And if you think you're not that's okay. Keep living the life you're living. Jared, appreciate you, my man. Jared says, sorry I'm late. He was observing an end user group attempt to push plan the project. Heads up, it didn't work. Surprise, surprise. Jared, thank you, my man. Okay, so got the input from Ruben. We went and got the stuff, because now all of a sudden I'm not a critic. I'm an advocate. I am going to get the resources to make the work better for this person. And then we set it up, the prototype of the idea of how we were going to improve the work. We set that up for him. And then we put it in play and watched him as he smiled and gave us a thumbs up. After watching him suffer, bent over, twisted, it was super meaningful. And more importantly, after that, it was like day 2. We did that thing. The next day when we came back, people were telling us hi. This group of lean nerds was being greeted by our trades out there. And even being invited, like, hey, man, I know y'all are working with Ruben. Can you come check us out? Can you come help us with our work? Which is something I never experienced in my career. Ruben started sharing some of the tools and gadgets that we got him because he wanted to help his friends have a better experience. So we're like, oh, now we got to go buy more stuff. And so all of a sudden we had this explosion of buy-in, right? And this is one that kind of gets under my skin when I hear general contractors talk about, well, why don't the trades ever buy in? It's like, well, on one, do you really want buy-in, or do you want trust? I stole that from a friend out at Robbins and Morton. I think his name's Nick Clem. Buy-in is a matter of compliance, and we can dictate and make that happen. Trust is what we want. And so what we were doing by serving these people was building trust. We're making deposits into that emotional bank account. And all of a sudden, this lean stuff was sticking. The trade was adopting it and implementing it. Oh my goodness, here we go. Jen's got a comment. Jen says, empathy lens for tactical work. There's no soft stuff in construction. 10, 4. And so another realization I had, and back to this idea about zoom level and calibrating our lenses, is most of the stuff that is preached and celebrated and taught about and experienced out in there in the field in terms of lean construction addresses the problem of the general contractor, of project managers, and of superintendents. And I'm talking specifically about Takt planning, last planner system, all these different techniques, BIM, and what else? All the junk we have out there. It's not junk. It's all valuable. It's improved lives dramatically. However, in terms of zoom level, it helps us organize and kind of stage things and minimize us getting in our own way to facilitate and free up work and surface constraints and remove constraints. Like, it really helps us do that. It helps us measure. It helps us become more reliable. But it doesn't remove the hard work and poorly designed work. So that is not a judgment. I'm sharing this to elevate awareness. Like, yes, you've done these things. We are all learning how to do these things. And I also want you to know and be aware of the fact that there is even more to be done if we adjust our lenses and learn how to zoom in to the hands and the eyes of the people doing the work. Because it's that work that is wearing people's bodies out, right? It is that work that is causing injury, soft tissue injuries, stress, quality concerns, production concerns. I had luckily early in my apprenticeship, I had my plumbing foreman, Johnny Martinez, and this is a perfect example. Justin Uyar had asked this question on one of the training sessions we were doing. He's like, you keep talking about redesigning work. Can you give me an example of redesign of the work live and in the moment? I said, man, yes, that's a brilliant question. So Johnny Martinez was my plumbing foreman. I was about 2 months out of high school, and he showed me how to read plans. I liked running copper, and I had the tools to run copper. So he's like, bro, you're going to go run all this domestic water system over here in the back building, out of the way, I guess. And he saw, I was running, I would run from where I was working to the Connex to get my unistrut and get my all thread. And I was running up the damn ladder, and because lifts weren't really a thing and laser levels were not a thing. I was using my plumb bob, making a mark, coming back down, getting my hammer drill, drilling the damn things, coming down, putting my anchor. And I'm hustling all day long. I'm 18 years old, right? I could do it back then. And then Johnny comes by about 2 days later, and he's like, Jess, I see you hustling and I see you working and running all over the place, but you haven't got very much done. And I was pissed. It hurt my feelings. And he said, I'm going to watch you tomorrow so I can see what we can do differently. And of course I was upset. So I'm like, well, bring some popcorn, right? Because if you're going to sit there, you might as well enjoy the show. He comes back the next day. He watches me do this 1 or 2 times. He's like, okay, I see what the issue is. I'm like, okay. And he said, tomorrow I'll bring, just keep doing what you're doing. I'll come back tomorrow. The next day he comes back with a tool pouch, simple little $3 nail pouch, right? It's real cheap. And he said, hey, from now on, I want you to put these things in your pouch and do the work. And I want to watch you. Okay. So I'm like, sure, whatever. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, I didn't have that cut 3 trips up and down the ladder for me, completely eliminated it. So my energy, I wasn't as fatigued at the end of the day. My production went up. I didn't have to work harder. I just had to work. And so some people may be thinking, well, dumbass, why didn't you just do that from the beginning? And so here is the thing that I want you to think about. Have you studied your people's work to really understand how they're doing and executing the work? Because we're all doing it to the best of our understanding. My instructions were install hangers and run the pipe as fast as you can, be done by next week. My instructions were not figure out a way to minimize the number of times you have to go up and down that ladder. So I had blinders on that were entirely focused on activity misinterpreted as production. So that's another question I have to you. How many times, or do you even know that your crews, the people out there on your site, you're counting heads, you're taking roll call, if you will, right? There's 6 electricians, there's 5 bricklayers, blah, blah, blah. And they're all moving. Are they producing? Or are you just seeing activity? You see 2 people in a lake and you see a lot of splashing around. One person could be drowning. One person could be swimming. You cannot tell the difference from afar. But if you get up close, you can see that one person needs help in a very serious way. And so back to the title of this talk about recalibrating your improvement lenses. I have 3 things I want you to chew on. One is, if you're still focused on optimizing production and optimizing outcomes, what's it going to take for you to start redesigning the work and deploying your continuous improvement genius to better serve the men and women doing the work? The second is, if you get it, you know it's all about people, and you've experienced the evolution of a positive culture on your job site because of your efforts with all of the tools, lean planner, last planner, target value delivery, all of the things. What's it going to take for you to go out, walk the job, and spend 15 minutes writing down, studying the work of one person doing the damn work and putting improvement ideas into action with them? And the last thing I want to challenge you and slap you across the face with, I opened up by saying, when you hear trade partner, who do you think about? Do you think about the owner? Do you think about the principal? Do you think about BD? Do you think about the project manager? What I want you to do, and we did get one answer, right? I think about the trades out there. I did not see anybody respond with the name of a craft person that's out there doing the work right now. And I'm taking that as an indicator that we haven't taken the time to learn a name of the men and women out there doing the work. So if all those other 2 questions are too big and hairy for you, go out there and learn somebody's name. And if you like to read and you want to have some allergies while consuming a book, check out my book, Becoming the Promise You Are Intended to Be. We're having the launch party next week. And just because you're here spending your day at the De-Centralized conference, I'm going to let you know in a little secret. It's actually available for purchase right now. Just don't tell anybody, because we want to have a big bash next week. So folks, if you have questions, comments, disagreements about what I shared, I welcome them. Please dump it in the comment here. And I'm fixing to bring our next baller up, Mr. Henry Nutt, because I'm going to be handing the baton over to him. So here we go, Mr. Henry. How you doing, my friend?
Jesse, doing great. How are you?
Oh, man. Well, I don't know if you caught it, but I almost forgot that I was presenting today.
You did?
I did. And now it sounds like Joe's up, and who's next? Like, well, I'm next. Damn it. Oh, man, I'm a goofball. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man.
Oh,
how about you?
Oh, I'm like adrenaline pump and also sugar crash at the same time. So that's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
Mr. Henry, I'm about to hand the stage over to you. Any thoughts or questions you want to ask before I do?
I am no questions. Just I'm very excited about today, and just looking forward to sharing a little bit about what I think is important when it comes to lean and my niche in the world of construction and lean thought and ideas.
Amazing, man. Well, my friend, I am gonna bounce off. I'll be in the background here, and you'll see my face again 5 minutes before the top of the hour.
All right.
All right, here we go, Mr. Henry Nutt.
Thank you, sir. Very happy to be here with everyone today. I'm not even sure who's here, but I'm Henry Nutt, and I am a pre-con exec for Southland Industries. I've been in the sheet metal trade since 1987. Worked as a superintendent for Southland for 12 of my 16 years here. And in that time, I have been able to work with some dynamic teams and some dynamic projects across the country, working with other people, and primarily in Northern California for me, but been across the country talking to different people about their lean journeys. Getting with craft folks, that's my world, that's where I come from, and trying to get people to buy in and understand the value. And so there's lots of conversations happening right now about this. It's really cool. It's exciting. It's motivating to really see that there are really some people who care tremendously from their hearts about why it's important to have these types of venues, to have conversations that revolve around people, that really primarily involve the people who install the work. We say the men and women that are on the wall, or the men and women with the boots, the ones who are actually installing the work. And as I know, and many of you know, that our greatest risks truly do lie in that phase of any project. We can do all this top end stuff, and it's important. It's critically important that our designs work, that we have folks from the field that are integrated with those design folks, and creating this massive plan to execute on this project. But if we don't pass that baton correctly to those folks who actually have to now carry that baton and take that baton that has the most impact on the job, which is getting it done, getting it built, then we fail. And many projects do indeed do that, they fail. And what that's done over generations is it just created this mindset that this construction is really, really, really hard. It's not for me. It's too complex. We never make money. It's too contentious. It's only for men. All these different things that in some cases it's true, unfortunately, because we've made it true. It doesn't have to be that it's the fact, but it's the stories that have been told, and that what people believe, because it's the experiences that we have had. And so today I want to share a little bit about building collaborative teams, and understanding some of the dynamics that go along with why we don't. I want to talk a little bit about my contribution, or my labor of love to this industry, and the short book that I wrote that talks about the mindsets that exist. And many times the conversations I've had about the book that I've written that talks about 7 principles, many think it's just for the folks coming in the industry, and it is, and it was written for them, but it has a different fold in it as well, in regards to some of the old dogs that we say, DAWG, in the industry, that need to understand, how do you approach people that don't come from your generation, that don't think like you, and you can't use the same tactics that once worked before to a degree, they don't work now. And so understanding I think one of the best things we can do as a leader is truly understand who our students are, and understand how to make them better. And one of the ways we can make them better is understanding who they are, and understanding the backgrounds, and understanding the different nuances that may come up. And so what does that mean? That we have to be a student of the people that we're trying to lead. It's like being a good coach. We understand who's on our team, if we're playing baseball, we know who's good at first, we know who's good at third, we know who's good catching, and who can pitch. That's our responsibility as a coach, to understand how to make our team work, not just a bunch of people get on the field and just go find out where you should go. You really understand by studying and really understanding. And that takes time. And that's not something you find in our apprenticeship classes and workbooks about how to build people. And so we've done it. We've done it poorly many times, and we've learned some hard lessons. But I think we're in a position now in this industry to make great improvements and strides. And I'm encouraged, because I see different people around the country doing that, and they have a spotlight. and many of them are on this panel or this call today and tomorrow presenting about what they're doing. And so it's great to be amongst those people, and many that, I don't know. So I want to start out talking about, I did some research and just wanted to pull up some data. I'm a data guy. So 10 reasons why people hate their jobs. So let's go down this path. I took this off of Forbes magazine. And one of the things that stood out for me, I think years ago, about 50% of the people hate their jobs. That was a data point. Unfortunately, that number's jumped up. I've seen 85%, I've seen 70%. Irregardless, it's going the wrong direction, right? And can you imagine, just think about if half the people in the workforce hate their jobs. Just pause and think about that for a minute, and how that impacts society, homes, schools, families, communities. If I spend what I do more than anything else, a third of my life is spent at work, and I spend a third of my life doing something that I don't enjoy, that I don't get fulfillment out of, or I hate it. How does that affect our society? How does it affect me standing next to a person in line at a grocery store, driving down the freeway, coming home from work? All these different indirects, because they do affect us. And we have no idea many times the gravity of that. So just wanted to throw that out there. So number one is that people aren't respected. People don't feel respected. They feel like they're a unit. They're not valued. Number two, they don't have the right tools or the equipment or information just to get their job done. Their employer disregards their personal life. We talk about work-life balance, doesn't seem to have compassion, let's get the job done at all costs. Their immediate supervisor is a tyrant, unqualified for their job, or both. So it's not only having a tyrant as a boss, but a tyrant that doesn't know what they're doing, and everybody knows it except that person, and you're going to work every day with that condition. They're tired of being lied to. Hey, we're going to do this for you. We're not going to get this to you. And it never happens. And at some point, you're just lying to me. Just quit talking, right? They have no visibility into the future and no confidence for the leaders to do the right thing. So there's no place. They don't see that they fit anywhere. They're tired of dealing with the politics in the workplace. And every company has it, right? But is it overwhelming? Does it dominate what I need to do in my position? They're underpaid and overworked. Just throwing out the stats. They go to work every day and push a rock uphill, trying in vain to get forward motion on their projects, and they're tired of pushing. Think about that. Do we make the job so difficult that we feel like we're pushing a rock uphill every day? How is that mindset going to be? They have to watch every word they say and every move they make because they feel like people are out to get them. And if they say the wrong thing, they're going to lose their job. So they walk in fear every day. So I'm sure if you go and Google that, you're going to find 10 other things, right? So is this not the end all be all? But it's trying to create the understanding and just kind of creating an atmosphere for you to think about when we talk about building collaborative teams, some of the things that we're up against. A couple other things that I think that I want to throw out there, and I think this is unfortunately common knowledge as well, in construction specifically, that the construction professionals are nearly twice the rate, have the twice rate of a substance abuse than the national average, I'll just say. So we are more prone to use substance to get through the day. There's another indirect right there when you talk about, I hate my job. And if I'm dealing with this contentious environment, I'm trying to find an escape. I'm trying to find a way out. I'm finding a way to check out because it's getting to me. It's getting to my family. It's a lot of pressure. And so that in turn, we know about the suicide rate, which we rank in the number 1, 2 zones, and depending on the year it is, and so we have a higher suicide rate amongst men than the general population. And it's a statistic that we've carried and ought to not be proud of it, obviously. But it's a reality for us to recognize. So thinking about all that daunting information, right? Thinking about what that looks like and what we're up against, and you want to come in and say, hey, I want to build a collaborative team. And that's me. I have to understand the facts. I have to understand what I'm up against. I have to understand the resistance. I have to understand the mindsets that people will have that look at me at the corner of their eye and say, what the hell is he talking about? He is completely checked out. He doesn't understand what's going on in this job. He doesn't understand the pressure. He doesn't understand the specifics here. And he's going to come in here and say, kumbaya, we're going to make it better. And you don't. And so it's really important for us to have empathy and understand the lay of the land when we step in to say, hey, I'm going to come in, not with a cape on to save the world, but really I'm going to come in like you and talk to people and try to figure out, how do we get this done? How do we make sure that we are ready and understand what the real issues are, so we can begin to address those things when we talk about collaboration. So I want to also give you guys some other stats, and I think most of us know this, right? But I think it's important to understand when we think about the demographics in the industry, and we think about the workforce shortages that we all are talking about across the country, right? And we know that women make up 10.9% of roughly of the industry, and that's general. That's not craft workers per se. It's about 4% in the craft worker world. African Americans make about 6.7%, and Asians make about 2%, and I believe Latinos are in about the 30+%, and whites are 87%. Right. So if we look at these statistics and we look at the actual population in the country, we understand where the pool is. Right. They're going to come from Asians, they're going to come from Blacks, they're going to come from women primarily, and obviously Latinos, Mexicans. That is the group that we're going to need to focus on. It's just what it is, right? And so not saying that we're not going to bring in white men and white women, or white men predominantly, is just saying that this is the demographics that we have. This is the math, and the numbers don't lie. And so all people are coming into the industry, but our big focus in the big pool of where we need more is going to come from these different groups, right? And so we need to understand how to have a strategy in building those kind of teams. There are some great projects around the country that are happening that I'm a part of, and I get a chance to really team with owners and general contractors and other trade partners, and figuring out how we're going to partner with schools, pre-apprenticeship programs, diverse businesses, and just figure out how do we raise that level of input and collaboration and partnership within those different classes of people. And it may make you feel uncomfortable. It may make you feel like, well, I don't know how to do it. Or you might just be, I'm pushing back. No, it doesn't really matter. And you can have your opinion. And I don't necessarily need to argue with anybody about it. It's just, I understand that this is what needs to get done. And we have to be more conscientious about it and understand how to roll that out, right? So, so let me just first say, give you a couple of tips on how to build collaborative teams. And this, again, is some stuff I just pulled in before I'm going to go into some of the stuff that's in my book. So giving employees a compelling mission that contributes to society and is exciting. So long as the day or the times when we would just say, hey, I just got to get a job done. I want to go in this job. I need to make money. I need to go pay my bills or have a kid in a way, right? Those things are, you got some responsibilities and you just go to work. And we did that. And we did that, and we look back maybe 10, 15, 20 years later, and we see our life just kind of flash by us. And many times our children and others have watched us do that and say, I don't want to be like you. I love your career, but I don't want to have a flash and take a job because I absolutely just have to take the job and I have nothing else I can do. I want to have meaning in what I do. And I want to know that it contributes to something larger than myself. And that's a mindset that exists, and it's more prevalent and more common. And so we have to have it in consideration when we're talking about collaboration. How are you bringing that to your team? Using collaborative tools to revolutionize the modern workplace. So thinking about the type of tools that you use that will draw people and cause people to come together, team building exercises and things that you can do that allows everyone to contribute and have a voice in the room. and understanding how to monitor that, because everyone is not going to be loud, obnoxious, or very bold and vocal. You have some people who are soft-spoken and quiet, but have some of the best insight that you'll ever get, but you'll never hear it because you don't know how to draw it out of them. And so it's one thing to say, I'm an assertive, I'm confident and all that. And like, yes, I've been a soft-spoken person my entire life, believe it or not. And I don't necessarily want to get on the stage, but I do. And people ask me all the time, when you do it, you're known all over the place and you're Henry Nutt. And you have no idea when someone gets on the stage, and every time you are like that duck in the pond, and I look cool, calm, and collective, but on the inside, you're like paddling and just to stay afloat in a sense, right? So it's everyone struggles with that, but it's a matter of understanding that if you're doing something that you truly believe in, that you're passionate about, the fear tends to subside because you know the message is more important and it's not about me. So it's easy to check that out of my life and not be caught up in the moment of being afraid or looking at the thousands of people in the audience or whoever I'm going to get on stage to talk to, or if I'm just talking to a bunch of people in the room that don't know me. I believe in what I'm saying because I've seen it work for me. And so it's like having that kind of passion. So having something that you can revolutionize your modern workplace. Focus on members' strengths. Again, going back to that baseball theory, is knowing who can do what really well. And sometimes you just ask people, what do you want to do? And then you put them out there and then you see how they do. And you say, well, you're doing okay. You give them some time and maybe that's still not the thing. And that's you that has to understand how to get the best out of that person. Encourage employee socialization. Again, that's about the team building thing and recognizing how you can bring out the best in others and connecting people. I think one of the things I hear about being a part of the LCI, the Lincoln Construction Institute, and going to Congress every year or other events, is the networking, it's the people, it's coming together, it's talking, it's giving high fives and hugs to people that you haven't seen in a while, and just sitting there having dinner or a drink with them. Sometimes that's all I need is the connection, right? And so like giving people a chance to be social, because we are social creatures. Some people want to be in a group session and some are one-on-one talking. Whatever it is, we all get a chance to kind of bond, connect, and have that sense of connection with other people that are like-minded. Inject innovation, right? Challenge people to be innovative. Give them the license to try something different in your place of work. And when they screw up, don't slam them and throw them away. So don't give them the most important thing that could cause your company to fail or the project to fail. But if they fall, let it feel like it's just falling, a foot off the step or something versus falling off the top rail of a ladder. Give them something that would make sense. Minimize conflicts quickly. To really deal with those types of issues and not allow that kind of environment to escalate, and reward collaboration. Somebody's doing something that's really like cool, and even if it's an effort that says, man, even if it's not the best idea yet, but it's somebody that is motivated to try something, give them a platform, acknowledge them. And it's not like you got to give them a prize. Sometimes it's just about public acknowledgement that, hey, I see you. I see that you're trying this and we want to acknowledge it. And that's something that goes a long way when you do it genuinely. And then by example, just be the example of what you want others to do and be, and show that consistently and authentically, and it'll have a great impact. And so really quickly, I only have like about 12 minutes left. I want to go into a little bit of the book and why the part of the book is not just for the new apprentice or the folks who are trying to get in the industry. It's from those leaders understanding how you have to approach. So with consideration of what we just talked about with the suicide rates and the drug use and the 10 things that why people hate their jobs, and knowing that 50 to 70% of people actually don't like their jobs or don't feel fulfilled in their jobs. And then how to build collaborative teams. That I want to go through the seven principles that I think. I was going to just talk about one, but I'm going to quickly go through all of them so that you just kind of understand why there's relevancy and how you bring build those collaborative teams as that leader on the projects. So recognizing this, I tell people that the first chapter is called Small Beginnings. That everyone has to start somewhere. And so sometimes young people come in thinking like, hey, I want to be tomorrow the boss, right? Great aspiration, but probably won't happen, right? And being really clear, no, it's not going to happen. But here's how you get there. I remember telling somebody that wanted my job when I was a superintendent, and we did our reviews, and I said, just if you could have it your way, tell me what you absolutely want. And he said, I want your job. I was like, okay. I said, let's figure out how to get there without qualms, without hesitation, without fear, without feeling like, oh, he wants my job. Because I want him to have my job, because it means now I really can aspire to the next thing and become the next level leader. And he can, or she can, become that person that wants the job I have. So we can't be intimidated and fearful and be shallow in our mind in regards to future opportunities for even ourselves. So if we want the best for our people, we have to have the thought about ourselves and saying, I got to be able to move out the way. So that means you're getting promoted, you're moving up, you're going in a different direction. So you don't have to hold somebody in the position because you're afraid of losing your job. And that is a mindset that existed in this industry for generations as well. So we want to make sure that we understand that when someone says that, don't feel threatened. Feel empowered and be ready to figure out the navigation to get there. So small beginnings. We all have a story. We all have a beginning, but you're not going to get there tomorrow. It's going to take you time. It's going to take time to get there. And sometimes it's important that you tell that story to others. The next one is finding a mentor, or reading a great book, or getting a coach, right? And so it's really important that if you're the person, and I tell again, this is the mindset of some of the folks that are getting into the industry, that if you're the smartest person in the room all the time, you better get you some new friends. And that applies to all of us, but it's really recognizing that if we're going into different communities, if we're going into these different areas where we're finding people that don't look like us per se, how do we need to help them? How do we really become more effective in getting them to that next level? And it's really understanding, like, dude, all your friends are gangbangers, or you're selling drugs. You did that for a while, it worked. Now it doesn't, right? So you got to break the cycle. I can't worry about what happened in the history. Yes, this was real. It happened. You had these different issues. But now I need for you to step up and do something more productive with your life. So part of that is breaking the cycle. And part of that is, here's a quote, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And bad company corrupts good morals, another one. And so these kind of things that as much as you try, you'll be pulled back and down if you continue to fall prey to not breaking that cycle of friends. Stop being a victim. Number 3. Again, we all have a story. Like, I can sit you down and tell you about some stuff that will bring tears to your eyes, and I'm sure you could do the same. But at some point, nobody wants to hear it. At some point, okay, we kumbaya it, we hug it out, and then we got to move on. Then there's tomorrow. Then there's life still in front of me. And I've always told people there's nothing like being downtrodden and then being downtrodden and unemployed. So it makes it significantly harder when you're struggling and now you don't have a job. And so I need you to break out of those cycles, the victimization cycle. So many of us have things that have happened to us. And there's communities, in my communities, there's lots of men that just go away and don't raise their children, right? And so you're going to deal with people that have that issue, and they're going to be on your job site. And so how do you have empathy and show empathy to that person that didn't have that father in their home and not recognize it, and then may have some disrespect towards men specifically because they were checked out of their lives? And you don't have that in your mindset. That's not a part of your psyche because it wasn't part of your world. But you need to understand it because it will affect your team. And that's what's the key part of this is, again, having empathy and understanding some of the dynamics that go in the background of the people that we're bringing on, again, that are coming from different communities, different backgrounds, and different issues that they bring along with them. How are you making sure that you understand it to some degree to be able to help them? Again, not a handicap, but also recognizing that victimization won't do them any good. And we got to help them break out of that. Trying your best and always working hard. And that's one of those things where it's generic almost, right? But it's not common knowledge. And so sometimes folks don't even know what it means to try hard because they've never had to, or they never were motivated to. No one ever showed them what it looks like to really try hard or work hard. They can just be in a mindset of how to get over. How do I do the most or get the most with doing the least? And there's something to that, right? But not in the context when it's like, I want to just do the bare minimum of my job, barely passing. You're going to be the first one to get laid off. So understanding that's a mindset that may come on your job site, and how do you help people break out of that? Again, by showing examples, by socializing and getting people more engaged and understanding some of their background. Next one, love what you do or like it a whole lot. Because maybe you don't love it, but don't hate it, right? And it's so important to really love what you do. And that's what I want to get folks to really understand. If they show up with something they're passionate about, and why you have an opportunity to choose your career, to choose your pathway, choose something that you love, choose something that you at least like a lot, and you'll get better at it. Just because when you wake up in the morning, you're excited. I don't want to live for the weekend. I don't want to hate Mondays my entire life. I don't want to spend a third of my life doing something that I look forward to not doing. What kind of life is that? Like, really, what kind of life is that? So we want to make sure that we're taking time to really make some choices about, hey, not only do I want to like what I do at my job, but then once I'm at my job, I want to specialize in this particular area if I can. The door's open. It's a matter of communicating and helping people understand that. Learn how to follow someone. Every great leader has had to follow and submit. And I think part of the key is that submission part, because you can't always be in the front. Sometimes we need to know when it's time to shut up and be quiet. And sometimes if you've never been in that position where you had to just check yourself, you're not going to be a great leader, because you're never going to listen to anyone but you. And you're going to think, yeah, you are the only one who has the answers. And so we want to make sure that we understand that mindset, and people coming into our work is learning, like, hey, it's okay to follow. And I tell people, you don't have to know a whole lot of stuff. I just need you to be able to show up on time, have a great attitude, and be willing to learn. Then the rest is on me or us to help you get there. And lastly, it's becoming an asset versus a liability. Really knowing what that looks like, knowing what you are in your job. Are you the first one to get let go? Well, let's talk about why. So those kind of things I think are really important. Jess, I see you back on. That's my spiel. Good to go, man.
Henry. Well, first, folks out there in the Omniverse, this is the book that Henry authored, and what he's talking about, the 7 principles. You can see it's a little worn. It's got some sand in it from Hawaii. I was reading it when I was out on the beach. Henry, so we do have a question, and there's also some other stranger up here on the screen, my buddy Sean Moran, who's coming up next.
All right.
So Adam asks you, Henry, what is your favorite quote in the book?
Oh, man. My favorite quote, I think I have to go, I always go back and defer to my parents, my mom and dad. I don't know if there's one favorite quote. My dad was tough. He's still alive, but he was a tough dude in raising me. But he always showed me by his example of work, and he helped me develop a work ethic. And he always told me to think. He would like put his hand, he would do like this on my head, right? It's like, think, and like use your brain, use your mind to make decisions. Don't be like everyone else. And I'm not even sure that's in my book per se, but it's something that resonated with me as a little kid, to like don't try to be different, just be who you are, but don't try to be like everyone else, because the wave is going that way. And it really helps. It stuck with me to not try to be like everyone else, be the best version of myself when that wasn't even a thing. So that's probably what I would prefer back to is that. I don't think it's in the book, but that's what that comes to mind now.
So did I just hear a second book?
Oh yeah, no, it's It's in the works. Yes, sir.
Amazing. Well, and Jared Wilson's out there. He says his wife in 3 days. Why did you order 4 more books from Amazon? So we kind of started this fire here, Henry.
All right.
Folks, if you didn't get it, or maybe wasn't clear why I'm so enthused about having Henry. Henry, thank you for being gracious with your time. My observation is I've seen you everywhere and involved in everything. We'll say in the lean construction, DEI, like trades, all the stuff. And you're always a soft, quiet voice, but huge and tremendous impact. And I'm going to say this, and Sean's going to laugh because it's never going to be true. But I wish I could approach things the way you do, with the grace and humility that you do. Like Sean's laughing, he's like, "Oh shit." And it's important to me that people see all of it, right? Because we've all got different styles, and more importantly, we all have the aptitude to influence the change we want to see. And so being able to study you and watch you from afar, and now to have conversations and share the screen with you, is a huge celebration for me. And I'm grateful to you, Henry, for what you've done for our industry, for men, for fathers, for trades, and for me specifically. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and keep doing what you're doing, Jess. I applaud you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. You take it easy, sir.
Too.
Later. So, Sean, that just leaves you and I. We're next, and we got one more group coming up. So, question to you, Sean, because this is all a big experiment. Were you able to click share to your thing?
No. There's a thing that says stream this to your audience.
Yes, click that.
Click that. I click. It'll probably blow up, but we'll try it.
Let's do it. We're experimenting right now, y'all.
Audience. Select destination.
And folks, so while my buddy Sean is doing that, I left a link in the comments, in the YouTube comments. It takes us to a Plus Delta app. So Heather Ormonde, who's going to be gracing us with her presence tomorrow, went ahead and put this together so that we can get feedback from you guys, from your experience of the different presenters, the host, the flow, all of the things. We'd love to know how this is impacting you. Go ahead, Sean. You good? Oh, there you are.
I clicked the thing and I typed some stuff and I hit a button and it went away. So I guess that means
it's working. I could see you on mine. So there's an improvement on my end because I haven't done that with every speaker.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to do. Adam, you're going to be coming up next. So I'm going to be hitting you with the same question before we go. Folks, Sean Moran, I've never abandoned him. I've always been there.
Whatever. We're going to start there? Come on.
I just want to tell people how important you are in my life, Sean. We met through some training. I was doing the AGC CM Len training. I think you were one of the students in the class. And I was like, man, that dude's different. And obviously I was like, man, I need to spend more time with this guy. Like Henry said, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're screwing up. And so I wanted to be in touch with you. I was working for a different organization, started recruited you over, and then I left you. And I continued to do that. But you've had a lot of impact on my life. One, in terms of me becoming aware of the influence that I have. And most importantly, my awareness around self-care and what I used to consider vacation and what I consider vacation now. I don't know if you remember this, but I was bragging to you about the vacation I had coming up in Seattle.
Vacation.
And what I was doing was I was going to Seattle Children's Hospital to get a behind-the-scene 2-day hangout with their continuous improvement team. And so I'm telling Sean, yeah, I'm going to be doing. He's like, Jesse, that's work. That sounds like work. I'm like, no. But we're going to dinner. You remember that?
Yeah. Ooh, you're going to make time for yourself and eat. I got another story about a Hot Pocket not long after that, but whatever.
You can tell that one after I'm off the screen. Yes, that's a true story. And so Sean has always, folks, if you don't have people in your life that aren't courageous enough to point out your blind spots, you need to get them. That is what Sean has done for me from the onset and continues to do. I'm a better person because of it. And so, Sean, I'm fixing to hand the screen over to you. And I'm eager to hear the concept that you're bringing to us. So take it away, my man.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I'm going to kind of do a little housekeeping here. So that's kind of cool. Keyed up with talking about some blind spots there, because that is actually the basis, or at least the beginning and a theme throughout my story that I'm going to share with you today. But first, let's talk about that hot pocket. All right. So as Jesse told you, I kind of came over to the company he was working at, and it involved a little bit of travel, not much, but like a little bit. So we both go up to Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm thinking, okay, cool, man. We're going to go out. We're going to like eat good stuff. We're going to see some stuff. It should be fun, right? It'll be work, but it'll be fun. And I'm 47 now. So 4 years ago, I was about 43. Jesse and I are about the same age. So he's a 43-year-old man. The point of that is at this point in time, he's like about a 43-year-old man. We go on this trip to Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, they got all sorts of good food, right? And I'm thinking, okay, we're probably going to go out to dinner tonight, yada, yada. And I see him in the hotel lobby, and I'm like, hey, man, you want to go grab something to eat? And he's like, he literally has a hot pocket from the store downstairs of the hotel. He's like, oh, I got some stuff I need to finish up. I'm just going to eat this and go. Mind you, at least my hotel room did not have a microwave. And he's like going upstairs. So anyway, that's my dig on Jesse for a little bit. Now let's get into something a little more personal to me. This is, so like all of us in this industry, or even outside this industry, right? But especially this industry, we have plenty of stories. We have a list of stories about our journey from when we started to where we're at now, whether we've been in it for, 6 months, or in my case, close to, well, a little over 30 years now. Started in this industry when I was about 15 years old doing concrete work as a high school, summer job, and didn't really know what I wanted to do post high school, but I knew I had to go to college because my dad would kill me if I didn't. So that was an easy decision. Went to school, figured out I could do a construction degree. So that's what I did. It's all I ever knew and or loved. So I did that. And then got out and started even more experiences, right? Different chapters of experiences. Always liked the field side. So I was a superintendent for another company here in San Antonio for almost 18 years, or right at 18 years. And then came over to Turner. I've been here about 4 years as a lean manager. Most of the time I was at my previous company, I was a superintendent running work here in the San Antonio area. So at this point in time, when this story starts, it goes all the way back to my buddy Anthony Zavala. He was one of my foremen that worked with me for several years. Great guy, great confidant. Still talk to him today. Love him to death. And I was helping him through something about 7 or 8 years ago on a job. We had doing a big job downtown. Very stressful job. It was, let's just say it was tough, right? And he was having an issue. Now, mind you, I didn't know I was going through the same issue, but on a much larger scale. But my own awareness factor was like through the roof. But my buddy Anthony was going through an issue with one of the management people on site, with the maintenance crews, like the head of the maintenance folks. And he was, let's just say he was in a pickle. He'd gotten in a big blow up with this guy, and this guy wanted to throw him off the job, right? And I'm like, it's not going to happen. And I fought for him pretty hard, got him to stay on, kind of got it washed under the rug. But at this point, I'm helping Anthony with his problem, right? That I don't have, right? And what I didn't know it is I was having the same problem. I just couldn't see it, right? So me helping Anthony while starting to have my own self-discovery started to kind of open up. Talking to Anthony about stuff like, surround yourself with folks that can help you see these blind spots, and I'm going to help you through it. Like, how lucky was he to have me, right? Like, in this moment, I'm so perfect. And I don't have this issue. And I was giving him advice like, you're judged by your worst day or moment. You're a great guy. You mean the best. This guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. He's misunderstanding the situation, right? And we perceive ourselves and the ones we love, right, from their best day and their intent, kind of like we do ourselves, not how we perceive others that we necessarily don't know or don't have that relationship with. So in my view, this other guy was totally wrong and Anthony was totally right, but I was kind of working through it. And I was starting to see, okay, well, now that I got all the facts, there is a little bit to this other guy's side of the story, right? Even though I love Anthony and everything's great. And so as I'm helping him through that, I do start to open up my mind just a little bit. Like, okay, there's two sides to every story. And like this guy perceived the actions of my buddy being a little different than the intent. That's A, his fault, and B, his misunderstanding, right? And we don't carry the baggage from our worst days for ourselves like we do others. So it doesn't accumulate. So other things that probably happened accumulated with these two folks, and then boom, it happens, right? Well, in the same moment, and actually that's me in the background over there, that's at my point of occurrence, right? Like that's around the same time that this happened. That's me as a superintendent on that job at that time. And then I had a slap in the face, like a wake-up call. Like nobody physically slapped me, but I got a wake-up call with oddly enough from my wife, but about work. And my wife didn't have much to do with my work life. I was the guy that, was married at home, but I was really married to the job. And that kind of dictated my whole life schedule. So I'm on this job, working crazy hours. And my son was getting some help with dyslexia downtown San Antonio at the Scottish Rite organization. And so my wife and mother-in-law and whomever else, other parents would carpool the kids down for that training for 2 years, 4 days a week, right? Great program, not the point of the story. So anyway, they were downtown in San Antonio. We're from Bulverde. And my wife came to me one day and she said, "Hey, there's this guy from your company that said he knows you." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, who is it?" And she goes, "Well, I didn't get his name, but when I mentioned your name, his attitude like changed, his demeanor changed. I think he's like scared of you." And so at some point she told his name. I don't remember his name. I didn't know the guy. He'd never been on my job before. And he told my wife, like literally, "Oh, that Sean, like Sean Moran, ooh, he's tough. Like, ooh, And I've been living up to this point solely on my intent. I'd never considered someone else's reality, right? I call it perceived reality at this point in life, right? Because I kind of assume they're wrong, right? Because my intent is what's right. Their perceived reality must be wrong. And that's their experience, right? So not the intent, but that's what they're receiving. So it kind of hit me. So it was like the first time, like, wham, there's something there. I think I call this like, I kind of felt like something's up. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but how does this person have this opinion of me if we've never even met? And I can tell you it's probably from a lot of things that happened that, were stories told about, my worst days or my non-best moments, right? Or maybe things taken out of context, like who knows? But it took me by surprise. So it was definitely something I was unaware of. That was a testament to my awareness as to just how shocked I was that this guy had an opinion of me and we never met. And in my brain at that moment, I'm like, well, he's obviously wrong, right? I didn't have this whole like intent versus reality, perceived reality sort of thing in my head. I just thought, wow, he just got it wrong. Like, dude needs some help. So I at some point labeled this as an external experience from my perceived reality regarding this person. Okay, so I've got my intent, and my reality is that I'm a good person, I'm a nice person, and that I mean well, right? And this is obviously not that person's experience. At this point, it was kind of like it was an unknown external experience until I heard of the person's experience from my wife, right? And then I'm like, oh, wow, this exists. And I don't even know if I felt bad about it. Like, I'd never even meeting the guy. which is kind of weird, and or maybe that's good that I didn't like seek him out to tell him he was wrong, right? Because he has experience, and that was something that I needed to know and I needed to chew on for a while, right? So not too long after that, so I got done with that job. It was about a 2-year job. Got done with that job, and then we were going to try this lean thing on another job. I was already kind of looking at it, getting out of ops and looking to do something else. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So this lean thing came across. Hey, we're going to hire this lean consultant, and you're going to be the guinea pig job. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds different, and that's something that I could definitely sounds good. It sounds like unicorns and rainbows, and everything's going to be great. Probably won't work, but I'll give it a shot, right? And so we hired a lean consultant. This guy comes in, and immediately I trusted him for whatever reason. He's a very trusting person. I never questioned what he had to say. But it wasn't long after that downtown job that I met Joe, a lean coach. And I got to tell you, if you find the right person at the right time in your life to tell you what you need to hear, it's life-changing. And this guy changed my life, right? The first thing after he'd kind of assessed where I was and what I was doing and some conversations we had, he let me know in so many words, very bluntly, that I was part of the problem. And at this point, I'm listening to the guy because nothing that's come out of his mouth was off base. And I'm like, okay, maybe there is something here. I've got this other experience, these little thoughts in my head from back when I was with Anthony, then this guy with the guy that had the kid in Scottish Rite from my work that had this, to me, crazy perception of who I was. And now this is the very beginning of some deep self-reflection. Okay. And I just needed kind of that kick in the hiney from Joe to get me looking inside. I've never looked inside before. It's always outside because my intent, like I'm hanging my hat on that. So there's no reason to look here, right? The problems are out there. And it was my first introduction to the concept that someone else's reality would be different than mine. Okay. I just assumed everybody's reality was, in their experience, was what my intent was. And you can ask folks, you can ask my old assistant supers, you can ask my old foreman, you can ask old people. Those were two different things. And I know that now. And in the moment I did not. There were, in my opinion, at that moment, and there always is, heck, for that matter, but in this part, the gap between the two realities, mine and someone else's, the gap was great. Now with a little more self-awareness and discovery on what that is, I think the gap's a little shorter, it's probably still exists, but nonetheless, we'll get to that later with another example. But in the moment, right, I self-justify my actions because, I've been praised for my behavior and actions my entire career. It was just the way we got stuff done. It was the industry, I guess, or at least I was a product of the industry. I can tell you that at that moment, and I still am. And thank God we're moving in the right direction, I think. But just because I was good at it didn't mean I liked it or that it was right. Right. I now have more of a mentality, right, that folks are not obligated to adjust their experience to my intent, right? Like my intent can be great. And if it's not received in a good, positive way, if that was my intent, right, then maybe I've done something wrong. Maybe I need to dig a little deeper. Maybe I need to go a little harder at that subject. Reach out to folks, getting feedback. I mentioned earlier, like surrounding yourselves with people that will give you feedback. And Jesse mentioned that a minute ago, right? Like if we're unaware of something, we have to have the A team on our side to point these things out and help us out with that. I had worked with people that I still love to this day that probably saw all those things that may not have been perceived correctly, according to me, right? And I never really heard anything about it. I almost felt like that was a personality that was lacking in a lot of folks I worked with. And I feel like they used me for that because they didn't have it. They were a lot more passive. They were like, they didn't quite have that bulldog edge, right? I could turn it on and off like a switch. So it really didn't mean anything to me. But for folks that didn't have it, it's almost like I was kept around to use that as a, tool when they needed it because they didn't have it. And then at some point I start getting held accountable for that, those behaviors, those situations that maybe went a little too far. Right. And I don't know. I struggled with that for a long time. So I now have the question at this point in life, right? I think I'm at the understanding, starting to get a little clarity on what's going on with this subject. And I'm like, okay, I've called it intent versus perceived reality, but that's wrong, right? Like that person doesn't have a perceived reality. They have a reality. That was their experience, right? Regardless of my intent. So when I gave Jesse the subject of intent versus perceived reality, it was a little tongue in cheek in that's still me kind of in the middle of my understanding. It just comes from me not quite being there, with my understanding of others. Right. And that's something I worked on pretty hard. I have worked on pretty hard over the last 8 years. And you may say, oh, wow, 8 years, like it really took you that long to figure it out. Well, yeah, maybe I'm a little slow. But I was hiding. I was cloaked by my intent. I was hanging my hat on that. I was still holding on to my intent as being right, and the other person was a little wrong, or maybe a lot wrong. But it's 100% their reality, and I don't get to say what someone else's reality is, and I shouldn't, and it's inappropriate. But I think we do that a lot because we rarely just walk around with a mirror and take a look at ourselves all the time. That's why the A team, right? Your buddies, the ones that will call you out on stuff or make you aware of things you're not seeing. It's imperative that we have that go-to group, and some of the stuff. So some of the other stuff that we've been playing around with lately, the communications capabilities, as Ms. Kirby Coates calls it, and emotional bungee jumping, as Mr. Jesse would say, is practicing our listening skills. Like when we can see that someone didn't have the experience that we were hoping they would due to our intent, right? How do we become better at listening to them? How do we become better at asking questions with the intent of better understanding what they have to say, as opposed to just proving why they got it wrong? So that's been huge and powerful for myself. It has helped me out like recently. Here within my professional career, I had a situation where I kind of labeled it as separate experiences, right? And maybe that's some pillows on the fact of the intent versus perceived reality or intent versus reality. But when I have a situation now where I have one experience and another person is having another experience that's very different than mine, right? And it's in a bad way, I can kind of more default to giving them the benefit of the doubt. Now, I say that, and I don't mean I do it initially. Okay. Initially, I'm just human. I react to it as if any human would. I may get a little defensive. I may get a little, they're wrong. But after some reflection, it's like, okay, if I can assume that most people want to be good people, then if I don't give them the benefit of the doubt, I'm not giving them a chance to help me better understand where that experience took a turn. Right. And there's always two stories to every experience. So why do we only invest in understanding our own side? We can do a better job listening and understanding and knowing that there's something there, even it may be just due to them not really listening to you, right? But if they didn't get it, they didn't get it. And they're forming an opinion and going to treat you in a certain way because of that. Most folks want the same thing out of a situation. And a lot of times, if we don't give the benefit of the doubt, we don't try to see it from each other's side and better understand, we get into what we would consider collusion, which is we both want the same thing, but we're both actively working together to make it a lose-lose situation as opposed to a win-win or a win-lose. Like we're both actively working towards lose-lose. So I try to take a step back, give the benefit of the doubt, and try to listen and better understand their angle. even if they're not totally right about how something was perceived or whatnot, there's something there. And I would encourage you to try to figure that out, as opposed to just getting defensive, putting your heels in the ground and pushing back towards they don't know what they're talking about. And folks just need to conform to my way of thinking and my delivery method. Right. So that's kind of where I've met with it today. And it's really helped better clarify some situations in life. Right.
Dude. Okay. So, Adam, you're on mute right now. I can't hear you.
Don't bring up my surprise Chewy just yet.
Oh, yeah. My bad. So, Sean Moran, we got a question. Adam Hoots asked the question, how does Sean improve his listening skills?
Dude, I tell you what, I've never practiced my listening skills until the two gentlemen on this call and a few others got together and jumped into the brainchild of Jesse's weird, mushy, crazy brain of emotional bungee jumping. Yes, 110%. That has been transformational for my skill. I thought I was a good listener up until the time we started that stuff. And I only did it because I'm like, oh, Jesse's got an idea. Let's figure out what it is. Nobody knows. We'll just jump in and see. And it was transformational. I did not realize the gaps I had in listening. I did not realize the gaps I had in my questioning skills. And that right there has helped me through this. And I mean, you guys from being in that know of some recent issues I've had, professionally, and how those things have helped. Like, I'm getting to the other side of it. And it's good. Like it's getting good. And it's because of all those things. So hats off to you. You guys have been great.
It's because of all the solutionizing that we did too. We were shanking you with the solution.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, it's the putting some different tools in the toolbox. We all have the PhD in solutionizing, asking closed-ended questions and listening to respond. I have the PhD, much like most everybody else does. So how do we get those other skills in the toolbox? How do we get those other tools in there? And that's one way. Emotional bungee jumping is where it's at.
10-4. Well, Jared, I'm taking Jared's comment out of sequence because he shared it earlier, but I think it's applicable to what you said here, Sean, is you got to support their failures and respect their attempt. That will make them ready and excited for the next round. And I think, as it relates to emotional bungee jumpers, absolutely, right? That's what, we're all going to screw it up. Good. And we'll get better next time. And then as it relates to how we opened your session around vacation, like my first one was going to Seattle Children's Hospital to nerd out about lean stuff. And I've matured since then. And Hot Pockets are good, man. And yes, I had a microwave in my room.
I don't think you did. You're just saying that. It doesn't make it any better.
So Jared has another question for you, brother. So here we go.
Yeah.
Do you find it harder to give or receive that needed feedback to improve? That's a good question.
Oh, 100%. I find it easier with the people I am more vulnerable with and have tighter relationships with, right? People that come up to me that I don't know and or that maybe I don't necessarily value their opinion, it's received differently, right? And those are some things I need to work on because it might be the truth bomb I need to hear, right? But it's a heck of a lot easier when you do that with a group of folks that you're vulnerable and have a better connection with.
Oh man! Again, and thank you, Sean and Jared. Thank you. That was a fabulous question. Like the thread that's gone through all the conversation so far is this people thing. What a strange phenomenon to be thinking and talking about people. Where I know, Sean, you and I have joked about it in the past. The Sean that you were before we met and the Jesse that I was before we met, if we would have worked on the same job, none of us would have been arrested.
Yeah, or both of us.
I had no compassion, no value for people. you were either going to help me meet my objective, or you were in my damn way. There was no in between whatsoever. Oh man.
Agreed.
Any last questions for Mr. Sean, Adam?
Sean, what are you most worried about?
What am I most worried about? You know what? I'm getting done with the thing I'm most worried about.
What was that?
This whole internet, getting on the live stream, like it's not my
Yes.
jam, right? So,
Me
so
either.
I'm almost over with it. So
Oh, man.
I'm gonna have a good
Any
time with you.
advice for me, Sean? What advice do you have for
Oh,
me?
you're
to go
like stone cold. There's no advice I could give you. Like you are like, this is just another day at the park for you.
But it's not, because I'm venturing into a topic that I haven't really talked a lot about. I've just kind of studied, and so yeah.
Then just let it go. Just let it go.
That's the plan. Yeah.
But you brought a wubby, right?
I did. I brought a little comfort zone with me. That's right. I got my own Chewy in the background, ready to roll. Oh yeah. I have this. Sometimes I can geek out on some things, and I just need maybe an old dog to bring me back in, from time to time. So.
I love it. Well, Sean, I appreciate you going out again on a limb with me with another random, totally unclear idea, and your contribution of bringing it to life, man. I'm grateful to you, my friend.
And I'm grateful for you too, and thanks for the opportunity to share a little story along the way.
All right, brother. Love you, man.
You too.
Later. Boom. So, Adam, systems check. Did you click the button that says broadcast to your network or whatever it is?
I have not yet, but can I do that now, Jess?
Yeah. Do it now.
Oh, all right. Let's
I think you can, because Sean did it.
Save changes, and let's lost connection to my account. Well, that's not good.
That ain't good. That's okay.
We're gonna get it going though. It seems like it's turning a little bit.
Oh, it's thinking.
Speaking of, people calling people out and not really always wanting to hear what they want to hear. You do that for me quite a bit, Jess, and I am very grateful for that. So thank you. Thank you.
It is my honor and pleasure. And folks, if y'all didn't catch what Sean said, and that was stirred by Jared's question, is that feedback thing, like the really valuable mind shifting feedback and those types of interactions are richer with trust. And so and in my perspective, how do you build that trust? You build the trust through vulnerability, sharing time, listening, and understanding each other. Hoots, I know you got a special guest. You got some solid content that you've delivered 1,000,000 times. So you're going to knock everyone's socks off. So I'm fixing to jump off the screen, and I have one question for you. Do you want me driving behind the wheel, or are you going to do all your own button pushing?
Yeah, I always want you helping me, Jess, because I know that you will call me out on my bullshito, and you will bring the best out of me to be as vulnerable and as transparent as I can. So please drive in the background. And I have to say, thank you for this. This is like, holy moly. I haven't even gotten through the whole thing right now because I am stuck on story 9. And I am just like, I've had tears in my eyes reading this thing, like relating to it, because I've never gotten into the level of trouble that you may have in your past. Not to blow the book, but he gets into a shitload of trouble. But I have kind of done a lot of the same things, but just never been caught. And so you have me really, really deeply self-reflecting. And so for that, I thank you very, very much. And congratulations on the launch of your second book, and I can't wait to see you in San Antonio on Friday, baby.
Next week. All right, baby. I'm coming off screen. It's all you, big dog.
See ya. All right. So, as Jesse called me out, I do have a Wookiee in the background waiting for me, and I'm super excited. For those of you that don't know who I am Adam Hoots. I am with Construction Ache Solutions. I am a student and professor at Clemson University. I am an old tradesperson, I guess. I wouldn't even call myself a tradesperson. I was more of like a helper. And then I got into the GC world for 20 years. and have recognized and realized that we are living in a broken system. And when I say that, I mean that with the utmost respect to the people who are, despite this broken system, continuing to labor and actually get things done. We see you out there. We recognize you, that you are a human being. I just want to pause. And Jesse, you did a great job earlier of talking about kind of that common theme that's going through all this. And you stole my content, but that's okay because I've taken a thing or two from you back in the day. But it's people, it's empathy, it's respect, it's team, and it's this paradigm shift. And here in a little bit, we're going to talk about what that looks like. And, you know, Spencer talked about relieving the stress utilizing a tool with Takt. We had Joe talking about the value proposition, and Joe described it perfect. And he actually took some of mine as well. Like, I don't have to talk to you about the broken system with the design and the skilled tradespeople and the tighter budgets and like he did an awesome job. Jesse, you with the SQI, like the paradigm shifts there are just magic. And then you've got Henry with the mindsets, and his book is like transcends industry. And then Sean with blind spots. All of these things that we're talking about are the system in construction that people have not figured out yet. And we have a system that we've designed to get the results that we're getting. So the suicide rates you heard about, the mental health problems, like all of these are a real thing. And it's because we're living in silos, right? It's these silos, it's this linear thinking. And so I want to take a quick second and recognize the fact that I have I've been looking at systems thinking for 4 or 5 years now, maybe longer, and I can't quite put my finger on it. So I need you, Omniverse, like help me through this thing. When you hear something that's like, oh yeah, makes sense, rings a bell, et cetera, help me out. Chime in, comment, ask some questions. I want to define systems thinking for you real fast. And I got this straight off of Google, Wikipedia, nothing crazy. It's a way of making sense of a complex world by looking at it in terms of wholes and relationships rather than splitting it down into parts. It has been used as a way of exploring and developing effective action in complex contexts, enabling systems change. And so we have one of the most complex systems that has not been figured out. And what we're used to from a thinking perspective is what's called linear thinking, where we have inputs and we have outputs, right? So we do A, we get B. We do B, we get C. We do, and it's a linear thinking perspective versus what if C affects B and B affects A, right? It's this if and then formula that really starts to develop this circular line of thinking that really gets us kind of out of control in some points. And so I want to talk to you again, high level about systems. I brought in my own Chewy. I asked Jesse for the other Chewy, but he said he was in Hawaii grinching it out or something like that. And so I brought my own Chewbacca to the table. And before, as soon as I start to geek out too much, I want to bring him on board. So Jesse, feel free to be the gauge of that as well backstage. I want to talk to you about two thoughts, two types of systems. The first one is a vicious system. Now, a vicious system, it's unbalanced, it's uneven. I really think of it a lot of times like a spiral where it's kind of going out of control. Yeah, shout out Maria Martin, one of my homies there. But so this vicious system, right? And think about our job sites when things aren't in control, when we don't have the right feedback set up, when we're not paying attention to the right things or solving the right problems. We have this kind of out of control and it's hard to gauge, hard to predict where it's going to be versus the other type of system is what's called a virtuous system. And that's a system that lives on in perfect harmony, right? Some people would say the same speed, the same distance apart. And so it's living on and it's got these balancing loops and reinforcing loops, which we'll talk about now. They're called feedback loops. Okay. And so as these feedback loops, as we start picking up, is the system working, right? What should we start, stop, or continue? We've got reinforcing loops and those amplify the system. They amplify what we're doing. versus balancing loops, which once we have change initiated to where we want to go, then we can dive in and really start to understand, are we reinforcing a vicious system or are we reinforcing a virtuous system? And when we can get it in a virtuous state, what are we doing such that we can continue to balance that and make that happen? And so I want you to really think about your project sites. What kind of systems do you have on your job sites? Okay. And we talk about those proverbial silos, and that means a lot because in the end, those silos are connected here as we start to explore what a true system is. And so enough geeking out on terms and systems and things of that nature. I'm excited to bring up my guest, my Wookiee, as you called it, Mr. Charlie Dunn. Charlie, how are you, sir? Oh boy. How about you're muted. You got me.
There we go.
There he is.
So, Adam, we got one question. So we start there and see where this goes.
Deal.
Justin said, can we have a virtuous and a vicious system that exist in the same space?
Man, I think that's huge because, yeah, you can have systems within systems. However, you will never have a virtuous system within a vicious system, right? Because a system's either vicious or virtuous. And if there's any type of viciousness in it, then it's not a virtuous system. I think it's important to note that you can have systems within systems, though, because I think Jesse did a great job talking about Zoom levels, especially with regards to how close to the work are you? Well, as close to the work as I am provides me another system and different feedback loops that are affecting that system. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe the best answer for Justin is a simple yes. That you can have some virtuous systems. We think about a project site, and we often talk about, hey, if the toxic culture stops within our, outside our walls, like that's how we try to fight to win. Like we create that team that even in the middle of a toxic culture, we're a solid team. So I might be an example of trying to create that virtuous, or in the middle of a vicious system. I actually, Justin, you give us follow up. Is there something else you were leaning into, or a specific example you had there? Adam,
I want what you're saying because there can most certainly be virtuous systems out there that exist within a system that's out of control or a vicious system, right? I mean, and I think we see that every day in construction where we do have some job sites that are focused on people, but we don't have job sites that have all of their systems figured out. Like, what is that perfect system for construction, and how do we get there? I mean, that to me is part of the most interesting research that we can do as humans right now.
So, Adam, you gave us some of the theory. I want to know, when did you become interested in systems thinking? Like, what was your?
Oh man, I'm following the Wookiee here. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll tell you, about 7 years ago, 7 years ago, I went to Boston and did a systems thinking masterclass with Hal Maycomer, to which I read the book Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. We read the book The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge, all of which talk about, how one thing can affect another that affects another. And by the time you know it, you've affected something that you had no idea, right? You have unintended consequences. And I was fascinated with that because there were changes on job sites. Like, I always looked at my job site, and you and I have had this conversation. And one of the reasons I wanted you on here is because in my mind, again, with this Zoom level perspective, the system was always the job site because that's how I was wired. Like and to answer Jesse's question earlier, what's a trade partner? Well, I think of the organization, right? Because that was the Zoom level that I had at the time. And so when I think of a system, I'm thinking from a project perspective and trying to understand what changes can I make and affect. And I was doing things that I thought was the right thing. And that, like, here's a perfect example for you. I was at Clemson building a job down there, and I was like, I'm going to put up signs that tells everybody how many days we have left on this project. And I was like, hell yeah, this is a great idea. And I was going to go and I was going to change the sign every day. Well, the signs kept getting ripped down. They kept getting like things wrote on them that were probably a little bit inappropriate. And come to find out, the tradespeople hated it because they were like, oh, so 55 days and then you're going to fire me and then you're going to get rid of me. And then what am I supposed to do? And so that was like a rude awakening to me, where I was like, man, I'm just trying to help everybody out by letting them know how much time we have left. And they looked at it as like a countdown clock of the end of their career. And what are they going to do after that? And so that was a really, really deep check for me of unintended consequences when it comes to the entire system. So
all right. So now I want to, Justin followed up, tried to reframe it. Does a virtuous, vicious system describe the system's current state? Justin, I'm going to assume you're talking about construction, and perhaps, but I believe there is a better word to describe what we have now, which is a lack of systems understanding for construction, a lack of a complete system, or if I maybe simplest statement would be it's incompleteness. That's our current system. We are missing things. And that's what allows, what Adam described to happen. An unintended consequence. Adam's pulling a lever and the system hasn't even been defined. So it's raw luck. Does he get better or does he get worse? And I see this all the time with technology stuff coming into construction. And I'm a huge fan for technology. I mean, obviously I'm sitting here, broadcasting from the Millennium Falcon today,
I like it.
But we don't have standards, baseline data, and the ability to do continuous improvement. We simply don't.
Yeah.
We get lucky or we don't get lucky. We don't have systems knowledge and understand the levers and their impacts. And that's really profound once you kind of lean into that and you're aware, like, hey, wait a second. I thought I was going to get this outcome. I actually got the opposite. And Meadows points that out, that's often, once you fully understand your system, you realize the lever you've been using gave you exactly the opposite outcome that you were hoping for.
Yeah, collectively, I don't think we are there from a systems thinking standpoint. I think, the industry, I feel like, is a lot like me. They're like, okay, I get that there's this system out there, but what does it mean? And what do I do in order to make change within that system? And you mentioned some of that, right? A couple of leverage points, and this whole conference, this whole decentralized conference has been about people. And that, I think, is the most powerful paradigm mind shifts that we can do in order to change the system. Charlie, what do you think the shift towards having a more people focus is going to do for the system of construction?
I guess I have a couple thoughts. One, I feel like that's just like a fundamental foundation. I believe you have to teach from a state of rest. So if we're going to teach about a system, we need to be in a state of rest, a state of psychological safety. So I believe that's kind of good, just by that. It's a fundamental requirement. I also believe that as we fully define the system and gain understanding of these things, that we're going to realize, some of the things we thought were incentives are actually disincentives. Yeah. Some of the things we value and promote actually, create some of the chaos and uncertainty, that we see. I see a question here from Maria that it's probably a good time to shift to: what types of things to do in the systems and system situations, one vicious, one virtuous. And I'm going to come back to that. Like, the first thing you have to do is make sure you have a full understanding of your system.
Pause and reflect. A wise man once taught me that.
Yeah, we knee jerk. We stay in this constant state of motion and action, and we don't take the time to stop and study. A statement that Jesse heard this week that I'm really going to continue to lean into is, I don't need the firefighting superintendent. The reality is that dude is probably an arsonist. I need the quiet scientist who's going to study the problem, love the problem, learn about the problem, and then when he acts, it's going to be intentional. It's going to have a depth of strategy to it, and it's going to stick. I think that's probably, we talked a little bit before this, Adam, about some of the indications that you're missing information in your system, that your system's incomplete. One of those would be just this randomness of response. A lack of intentionality about plan and schedule. Like if you see chaotic response, it's absolutely a system problem.
Yeah, that's paying attention to feedback, right? And that's kind of getting into a little bit of the silo that I think Sean was living in of you got to listen and you really got to listen. And Jesse talks a little bit about the whispers, right? And when the whispers get too loud, it's time to pay attention. And those whispers are feedback to a system that you've designed, or whether it's how you act personally or it's how you act professionally. I think it's I think it's important to take regular pause and reflect moments to say, what should I start? What should I stop? And what should I continue? Right? Those are points where you can have leverage in your system and you can make a change in what you're doing. And I also think that it's really important to note that sometimes there can be a delay in that feedback, right? You can do something and not recognize change for a month or 6 months or a year. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's kind of like the prophecy of how bamboo grows, right? It's like it takes 3 years for the roots to develop. And then in like 2 or 3 months, the bamboo tree is annoyingly everywhere, is what they say. And so I think it's important. And that's a whole nother piece of like systems thinking, is that whole iceberg model, right? It's like you see the event at the top, like you see what happens that's outside the water, but what you don't see is the time and effort and energy that it went into, and the structure and the systems that are in place underneath the surface that are really contributing to that success. Most people just are able to see the success. I think that iceberg model is super important when it comes to understanding systems, because you have the events, then you have those patterns, and then you have the true structure that went into developing patterns and events.
So, in fairness to Maria's question, when I come back, because I answered in a different way, but the intent, I think she'd say, hey, what are some strategies? So you recognize something you're in a vicious system. What do you do? Virtuous. What do you do? I'll start with the virtuous, because then I think, to me, one of the best strategies I've seen carries over into the vicious as well. You have to, amplify the good, recognize the good. And that really is a leadership, and then modeling the behavior you want, which to me has become really a fundamental thing on teams and success. How do I find and build those leaders that are going to model the behavior we want? That's a simple fact of high performing teams. Often the time we have to build the team is not long enough to get to the high performing teams, unless we have the ability to seed the teams with people who are going to model this behavior, lean in and recognize the value of that. And then at the same time, you've got to stop that reinforcing loop. If you're in a vicious system, stop the negative cycles, call it out. We had this other conversation about this golden moment opportunity. And that, to me, maybe is where you can have an indicator. Are you in a vicious or are you in a virtuous system? You're going to have failures. Fact. People do work. People make mistakes. In that moment, when there's a failure or there's a mistake, you have this golden moment opportunity. You're going to go one of two directions. You're going to go ego, or you're going to build trust. And on the ego path, you're going to create some vicious behavior. You're going to be right. You're going to be harsh. You're going to crush some people. You're going to force some people to wall up. You're going to cut off conversation. You're going to ask the wrong questions, the leading questions, the yes/no questions, because you're on a mission. It's your ego. You're about being right, telling everybody how wrong they were, and this is a failure. It's not going to happen again. Or in this golden moment, you can literally mint gold. You can demonstrate to someone that their value is greater than whatever the impact of this mistake is, and that you're going to first value them, reinforce that they're part of the team. You have their back. You're leaning in so that we learn. And you really don't know, to me, honestly, what kind of team you have until you hit those golden moments. Until you hit the hard stuff,
Well, you're talking about feedback, right? And we have two types of feedback. It's you either have reinforcing feedback, which is amplifying either a virtuous or vicious system, or you have feedback that's balancing, that you're able to say, okay, yeah, it's working and it's continuing to happen. And so I love where you're going, and to be able to print gold in those situations, that's learning, right? Like that's getting better, that's improving, that's focusing on people. I just want to take a quick second again to recognize two things, and then I'm done, and you can close it however you want, Charlie. Systems are everywhere, right? And if you don't think you're in a system, I got news for you. You are in a system. And so if you need to take control of that system, you need to design that system, because when you do that, your life becomes better. You become more liberated. You become more open, more vulnerable. You might even write a book about becoming the promise you're intended to be. So identify your system and then design the system. Take steps, take intentional steps to experiment with your systems and understand what I'm doing is seeking the outcome that I intend, or if it's not, then change something within that system. And so the other thing I'll leave you with is keep in mind the Zoom levels. Like it's so important, whether or not I'm looking at myself as like my own system and my own daily habits, or how I interact with the team around me, or how I interact with my family. All of these are systems, and all of these systems interact with other systems. And when we can fully start to understand the impact of one change to another, man, we're going to be able to make some gold. We're going to be able to print some gold, as you say, Charlie. So I appreciate having you on here, Chewy Dose, my man. How would you? What are your final thoughts? How would you close this thing out?
Well, the reason you want to mint that gold is that you're going to need some gold in the bank in the future. You know, that first golden moment's not going to be the only one. You're going to have other failures where, okay, do we have that gold in the bank? So you invest and you put that gold in the bank. And the second thing I would leave you with is this, you know, you identify gaps in the system by certain signs. How we estimate for cost in construction, the financial cost and the people cost. We know we don't understand our system because of how we estimate. And I'll leave you with one simple thing, because it's a mission I'm on with prefabrication, as a way to create a better working environment for people, a safer working environment, an environment that brings us into the next generation of worker that loves robotics and automation and tech and code and all those things we're going to need to meet the world's demand. But there's one simple question I hear all the time. Well, isn't prefabrication more expensive? Simple response. If we're talking about the cost for the planet, prefabrication is always the least expensive option. And we have to have a system that is that broad and it understands we're not just working in this construction silo. We're working in a planet populated by human beings, and we have to have a system that understands and measures the right things. And that's going to create our ability to lever that number one. And I said two, I got to throw one more in there because we didn't talk about Adam. If you guys have never read Donella Meadows' list called Leverage Points, just Google Meadows Leverage Points. What you're going to see is there's 9 leverage points in order of priority. And we spend a lot of time in like 7, 8, and 9. Number 1 is paradigm shift. That's what Jesse's about. Paradigm shift, mindset change, a people thing. So
Here it is.
there you go.
All right. Look at that.
And
All right, yeah.
you see where the point with the most leverage, right, is that paradigm shift and mindset shift, as Charlie's talking about. So yes, go read the book, go find this out. It's magic. If you want to print gold for your jobs, go get it.
Boom. Well, I'm not going to let y'all off that easy. So I'm learning. So we decentralized conference, first time ever. I was hoping that all the comments from the various outlets would come into this feed, but they don't. So I was like stalking you, Adam, on your LinkedIn channel. So there's other comments and questions coming up there that we can't see on this feed back here. And so, but I pulled one out, Sean, in response to the comment you made, Harry. He's like, the quiet superintendent equals the future of construction. Why not? My interpretation of that question is, why isn't that the norm, or what would it take for that to be the norm?
What is the quiet superintendent? Can you define that for me?
I'll hand that to Harry.
Yeah, so Adam, I think that's my quiet scientific superintendent as opposed to the firefighting possible
Yep.
arsonist. So the
Scientist.
person whose first response is to pause and reflect rather than attack and demand. All right. Don't go louder, go quieter. Bring other people in. Another way I've heard this guy that inspired this thought is a guy who said, "Hey, I'm looking for creative problem solvers. You know, how do I bring those people to the table with me? Because this project's so gnarly and nobody's smart enough to figure it all out. And I've got to create that kind of environment." That's the quiet scientific superintendent.
Boom.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, it doesn't matter if you're quiet or loud or throwing your hard hat, right? As long as you're focused on respecting people and establishing flow on your job, that's everything. And that will help your system all the way across the board. And so the level of volume of the superintendent, not important in my book.
10-4. Well, I'm going to pose a thought from this plumber's perspective. We have a culture in our industry that places value on people's volume and assertiveness. If somebody sits down and doesn't say something, they lack leadership skills. When somebody opens their damn mouth every time there's a microsecond of silence, that person's a leader. And I'll just say that is not a trustworthy indicator of leadership. How does that land with y'all?
I like it.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
And Jesse, I gotta leave you with this too. So for me, the why the Wookiee?
Yes.
The Wookiee side always wins, baby.
Yes, sir, it does. Trust the Wookiee, y'all. Well, Charlie, Adam, y'all did a phenomenal job of closing down day one of the Decentralized Conference. I've seen some comments out there about, is this thing recorded? Absolutely. It's going to live in different places, but the compilation of all the conversations are going to be on the YouTube channel. So I'll be sharing that. And also for all the speakers that shared their time with us today, I'll be sending you all the link to the raw video so that you can cut it up, clip it up, do whatever you want with it. Continue to share it. Adam, to your point, I feel like the conversations and the ideas, the tone of the conversation today is largely absent. And the beautiful thing is the instructions were, let's do this live stream thing and speak about whatever you want to speak about. And we just kind of, that self-organizing system that you introduced me to, Charlie, right? It just ended up this way. There was not a lot of parameters except for start time and finish time. Adam, I appreciate you for shouting out the book. It is a really intimate deal. And yes, I am leveraging this experience, this decentralized conference, to give people some awareness that the book's coming out. And I just posted a link. Like, I would love for you to get the book, and I would love for you to read it, and I would love for it to impact you. What I really, really, really want, I want to know personally how it made you feel when and if you ever do read it. Now, you don't have to go buy the book. You can also go to the blog. So I put the link down there, depthbuilder.com/blog, where I've been dumping in weekly entries that kind of tease or give some behind the scenes insight to each of the stories that I shared. And, Adam, you talked about some of the stuff that I share in there. Family member of mine was like, dude, like, are you sure the statute of limitations on those things have worn out? I was like, you know what? I didn't think about that. So I hope so. I really hope so. Folks out there in the Omniverse, thank you for your time. If this landed with you and it's scratching that itch that you've had and you couldn't reach, and other people that have the same itch, share this with them. Everybody that's up here today and everybody's going to be up here tomorrow really do give a damn about people. And we're all about leaving this world better than we found it. So appreciate y'all for your time. Charlie, Adam, thank you both, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you, Jess.
Peace. Now we got to do the dance.